The hospital lights burned cold and clinical as Evelyn Carter watched monitors track her infant son's failing vitals. 7 months of hiding, 7 months of building a new life alone, all shattered by one whispered question from the attending physician. Where is the child's father? Her hands trembled as she scrolled through blocked contacts, past the number she swore never to dial again. Adrian Moreau, underworld king, her ex-husband, the man who'd made it clear he wanted no children, no attachments, no weakness. But their son was dying, and only Adrian commanded the resources to save him. One call would bring salvation and drag her back into the dangerous world she'd escaped. If you're watching from anywhere in the world, hit that like button and drop your city in the comments. I want to see how far this story travels. Now let me tell you about the night everything changed. The February wind cut through Boston like a blade, rattling the windows of Evelyn Carter's modest apartment in Jamaica Plain. She'd chosen this neighborhood deliberately, far from the wealth and scrutiny of Beacon Hill, anonymous among working families and graduate students. Here, she could disappear. Here, she could pretend the past 15 months had rewritten her entirely. She stood at the kitchen counter, warming a bottle with practiced efficiency. 7 months into motherhood, and certain gestures had become automatic. Test the temperature against her wrist, adjust the formula ratio. Listen for the subtle shift in her son's breathing that meant he was waking. Simple rhythms that anchored her to this new life, so different from the one she'd fled. The apartment was small, a one-bedroom with creaking hardwood floors and radiators that clanged through winter nights. But it was hers. No security cameras, no armed men in tailored suits standing outside her door. No husband whose business dealings existed in shadows. She'd learned not to examine too closely. Ex-husband, she corrected herself. The divorce had been finalized 8 months ago, when she was 4 months pregnant with a secret she'd guarded like her life depended on it, which, in many ways, it had. Evelyn carried the bottle to the nursery. Really, just a corner of her bedroom, sectioned off with a folding screen she'd found at a thrift store. The crib was second-hand but sturdy, the mobile overhead assembled from paper cranes she'd folded during sleepless nights. Everything in this space represented freedom, even if that freedom came with financial strain and exhaustion so deep it felt like drowning. She reached into the crib, expecting to find her son stirring with his usual morning hunger. Instead, her fingers met heat that didn't belong. Oh God. The baby's skin burned beneath her touch, his tiny body radiating a fever that sent immediate alarm cascading through her nervous system. She scooped him up, his weight both familiar and suddenly terrifying. His eyes remained closed, his breathing too fast and shallow. Evelyn's mind kicked into emergency protocols she'd memorized from every parenting book and website. Check responsiveness. Monitor breathing. Take temperature. Her hands shook as she fumbled for the digital thermometer, already knowing what it would confirm. 103.7. For a 7-month-old, that number transformed worry into crisis. She grabbed her phone, dialing the pediatrician's after-hours line while pressing her lips to her son's forehead, whispering reassurances she didn't feel. This is Dr. Martinez's service. The voice was professionally calm, maddeningly unhurried. My son has a fever of 103.7. He's 7 months old. He won't wake up properly. Evelyn forced the words out steady, but her free hand clutched her baby tighter. Has he been eating normally? Any other symptoms? He was fine at the 2 a.m. feeding. It just spiked. The panic was creeping into her voice now, the careful control she'd maintained for 15 months starting to fracture. Should I bring him to the emergency room? A pause. Keyboard clicks. Yes, ma'am. Given his age and the fever height, you should go to the ER immediately. Boston Children's Hospital would be my recommendation. Evelyn was already moving, phone wedged between shoulder and ear as she grabbed the diaper bag she kept packed for exactly this kind of emergency. Diapers, wipes, change of clothes, insurance card, all the ordinary supplies that felt desperately inadequate right now. She dressed the baby in the warmest sleeper she owned, her movements efficient despite the fear trying to paralyze her. This was what she'd learned in her old life, even if the context had been different. When crisis strikes, you move. You think later. The Uber arrived in 6 minutes that felt like hours. She'd sold her car 3 months ago when the maintenance costs became impossible to justify on her freelance copywriting income. Another small indignity of her new life. Another price of freedom. "Boston Children's, please," she told the driver, a middle-aged man who glanced at the bundle in her arms and immediately understood the urgency. "You got it." The city blurred past, streetlights and early morning traffic, the world continuing its ordinary rotation while hers tilted toward catastrophe. Evelyn kept her fingers on her son's chest, feeling the too rapid rise and fall, the heat that seemed to be intensifying despite her best efforts to cool him. She'd named him Lucas, not after anyone, not following any family tradition, just a name that meant light, that sounded like hope, a name Adrian had never heard her speak. The divorce had been civil, as those things went. Adrian's lawyer had presented terms that were generous to the point of suspicion. A lump sum settlement, no alimony, clean break. She'd taken it because she recognized it for what it was, a payment for her silence, for disappearing completely from his world. She'd been 2 months pregnant at the final hearing, wearing loose clothing that concealed the truth. Adrian had looked at her across that conference table with eyes the color of smoke and ash, and she'd wondered if he could somehow sense the secret growing inside her. But he'd said nothing. Signed the papers. Left without looking back. Just as well. Adrian Moreau had built an empire on ruthlessness and calculation. He commanded loyalty through fear and respect in equal measure. He told her once, in a rare moment of vulnerability during their short marriage, that he'd never wanted children. Too much liability, he'd said. Too many ways for enemies to exploit weakness, so she'd made the choice to protect them both. She'd taken her freedom and her secret and built this small, hidden life. Until now. The hospital emerged from the darkness like a fortress of glass and steel. Boston Children's Hospital, ranked among the best pediatric facilities in the world. She'd researched it during her pregnancy, making mental contingency plans she'd prayed never to need. The driver pulled up to the emergency entrance. "Hope your little one's okay," he said, and there was genuine kindness in his voice. "Thank you." Evelyn handed him cash. She'd learned to keep emergency money in her coat pocket and hurried through the automatic doors. The ER intake area was surprisingly quiet for a Friday morning. A nurse looked up from her station, assessed the situation in one practiced glance, and gestured Evelyn forward. "What's going on with your baby?" "High fever, 1037 when I checked 20 minutes ago. He's 7 months old. He's not responding normally." The nurse moved with immediate purpose, taking Lucas from Evelyn's arms with the confidence of someone who'd held thousands of sick children. "Come with me." They bypassed the waiting room entirely, moving through corridors that smelled of antiseptic and recycled air. A young doctor met them in a triage room, already pulling on gloves. "I'm Dr. Patel. Let's see what we're dealing with." The next 30 minutes dissolved into a blur of tests and questions. Temperature confirmation, now 104.1. Blood draw from Lucas's tiny arm, his weak cry piercing Evelyn's chest. Urine sample via catheter. Physical examination checking for rashes, neck stiffness, any sign of what was causing this sudden spike. "Has he been sick recently? Any unusual symptoms?" Dr. Patel's fingers were gentle but thorough, checking Lucas's fontanelle, his lymph nodes. "No, nothing. He was completely normal." Evelyn hovered close, wanting to snatch her son back from all these invasive procedures, but knowing she couldn't. "What's wrong with him?" "We're working to determine that. Given his age and fever severity, we need to rule out serious bacterial infections, meningitis, urinary tract infection, pneumonia." Dr. Patel's voice remained calm, but Evelyn heard the gravity beneath. "We're going to admit him and start broad-spectrum antibiotics while we wait for culture results." "Admit him? For how long?" "Depends on what we find. Minimum 48 hours for observation." The doctor made notes on a tablet, fingers moving quickly. "I need to ask, is the child's father available? We'll need full family medical history, and if we need to make any major treatment decisions, he's not available." The words came out too sharp, defense mechanisms triggering automatically. Dr. Patel looked up, and Evelyn saw the slight shift in her expression. How many times had this doctor seen this scenario? Single mother, Sick child, absent father. I understand, but if there's any way to contact him, it would be helpful. Some conditions have genetic components, and we need complete information to... I said he's not available. Evelyn's voice carried an edge now, the one she'd learned to deploy when people pushed at boundaries she'd established. I can provide my own medical history. That will have to be sufficient. The doctor held her gaze for a moment, then nodded. All right, let's focus on stabilizing your son. They moved Lucas to a pediatric unit, a private room with walls painted in cheerful colors that felt obscene given the circumstances. Monitors tracked his vitals. Heart rate too fast, temperature still climbing despite the acetaminophen they'd administered. An IV ran into his small arm, pumping fluids and antibiotics into his system. Evelyn sat in the chair beside his bed, watching his chest rise and fall, and felt her carefully constructed world continuing its collapse. She'd been so careful. Prenatal care under her maiden name at a community clinic, birth at a hospital across state lines in Providence where she told them she was a single mother by choice. No father's name on the birth certificate. Cash payments when insurance didn't cover procedures. All that planning, all that protection, and here she was anyway, cornered by circumstance. Her phone buzzed, text from her landlord asking about next month's rent. She stared at it, the mundane intrusion of ordinary life. The truth she'd been avoiding for the past 7 months crystallized with brutal clarity. She couldn't actually afford this. Not really. Her freelance income covered rent and basic expenses, but barely. She had no health insurance. Lucas was on state assistance, which covered basic care but not extended hospitalization. And if they needed specialists, if this turned into something serious, she'd burned through most of her divorce settlement in the first months after Lucas's birth, paying for a better apartment than she could maintain, buying things she'd convinced herself they needed, building a life that looked stable enough to fool herself. That money was gone now. Her savings account held $1,100. Evelyn pressed her palms against her eyes, fighting the pressure building behind them. She'd thought she'd prepared for everything, but she'd prepared for the life she wanted to live, not the crisis actually unfolding. Hours crept past. Nurses came and went, checking vitals, adjusting medications. Dr. Patel returned with preliminary test results. Blood work shows elevated white cell count, which indicates infection. We're still waiting on cultures to identify what specifically we're dealing with. She pulled up a chair, her manner shifting to something more personal. Ms. Carter, I need to be direct with you. Your son is seriously ill. We're doing everything we can, but the next 24 hours are critical. The clinical words landed like physical blows. Seriously ill. Critical. What do you need from me? Evelyn's voice came out steadier than she felt. Right now, stay close. Talk to him. Babies respond to their mother's voice even when they seem unresponsive. Dr. Patel paused. And if there's anyone you should call, any family or support system, now would be the time. After the doctor left, Evelyn sat in the dimness of the hospital room, listening to the rhythmic beep of monitors. Through the window, dawn was breaking over Boston, the sky shifting from black to gray. She thought about her mother, who'd died 3 years ago. Her father, who'd remarried and moved to Arizona, building a new life that left little room for complicated adult children. She had friends from her old life, but those friendships had been tied to her marriage, to being Mrs. Adrian Moreau. They dissolved along with everything else. The only person with the resources to help, the only person whose name might make doctors move faster and try harder, was the one person she'd sworn never to contact again. Evelyn pulled out her phone, scrolling through blocked contacts until she found the number. She'd never deleted it, which said something about the part of her that had known this moment might come. Her thumb hovered over the screen. Adrian Moreau had made his position clear. No children, no family obligations. The divorce settlement had been his way of ensuring clean separation. Calling him now would violate every term of their unspoken agreement. It would expose the secret she'd protected. It would invite him into Lucas's life, into their life, with consequences she couldn't predict. But Lucas's temperature was climbing again despite the medications. The monitor showed heart rate increasing, respiratory rate elevated. Her son was fighting something his tiny body might not be strong enough to defeat alone. She thought about what Dr. Patel had said. Critical. Next 24 hours. Evelyn dialed the number. It rang 3 times, long enough for her to nearly hang up, to retreat back into her careful isolation. Then a voice answered, low and instantly familiar despite 15 months of silence. "Who is this?" "Adrian." He didn't have her new number saved, wouldn't recognize the caller. "It's Evelyn." Silence on the other end, but she could feel the shock transmitting across the connection. When he spoke again, his voice had shifted into something harder, more controlled. "Why are you calling?" No greeting, no pretense at civility. Just the direct question that characterized everything about Adrian Moreau. Evelyn looked at her son, at the IV running into his tiny arm, at the monitors tracking his struggle to survive. "I need your help." The words tasted like defeat and desperation. "It's an emergency." What kind of emergency? Suspicion threaded through his tone. After all, she'd taken his money and disappeared. Why would she surface now unless she wanted something? This was it. The moment that would change everything. "Medical emergency. I'm at Boston Children's Hospital." She drew a breath, steadying herself for the detonation. "It's your son." The silence that followed felt infinite. She could picture him, wherever he was, whatever he'd been doing, processing information that shouldn't exist, recalculating everything he thought he knew. "My what?" His voice had gone very quiet, which anyone who knew Adrian would recognize as dangerous. "Your son. Our son." Evelyn kept her eyes on Lucas, on the only thing that mattered. "He's 7 months old. He's critically ill, and I need you to—" "What the hell are you talking about?" The control was fracturing now, anger bleeding through. "We don't have a— You never said— I was pregnant when we divorced. I didn't tell you because I knew you didn't want children. I left to protect both of us." The words came out faster now, defense and explanation tumbling together. "But he's sick, Adrian, really sick, and I don't have the resources to— You had my child and didn't tell me?" Each word came out separately, precisely, like bullets chambering. "I made a choice based on what you told me. You said— I don't care what I said." His voice cut across hers, sharp enough to draw blood. "You don't get to make that decision. You don't get to hide my—" He stopped abruptly, and Evelyn could hear him breathing, could sense the effort it was taking for him to regain control. "What's wrong with him?" The question came out different now, stripped of anger, landing somewhere near fear. "High fever. They're testing for bacterial infections. The doctors said the next 24 hours are critical." Evelyn's throat tightened around the words. "I wouldn't have called if I had any other option, but he needs— I'm in New York. I'll be there in 3 hours." No hesitation, no negotiation, just immediate action. "Send me the hospital information and his exact location. Don't let them do anything major until I arrive." "Adrian, they're already treating him. They have to— I'll have specialists there within the hour. Just keep him stable." A pause, then— "What's his name?" "Lucas." She heard him repeat it quietly, testing it. Then, 3 hours, Evelyn. Don't move." The line went dead. Evelyn lowered the phone, her hands shaking now that the adrenaline of the call was fading. She'd done it. Opened the door she'd sealed shut. Invited the storm back into her carefully ordered calm. But as she looked at Lucas, at her baby fighting for each breath, she knew she'd make the same choice again. Whatever consequences came from this call, whatever chaos Adrian brought with him, none of it mattered compared to saving their son. Within 45 minutes, everything changed. A new doctor appeared, Dr. Sarah Chen, pediatric infectious disease specialist from Mass General, one of the top-ranked physicians in her field. She examined Lucas with meticulous attention, consulted with Dr. Patel, ordered additional tests Evelyn hadn't known existed. Who called you?" Dr. Patel looked confused, checking her tablet. "I was contacted by a private medical service requesting consultation." Dr. Chen's manner was brisk, professional. "They've authorized full diagnostic workup, cost not an issue. Let's get this child every resource we need." Evelyn understood immediately. Adrian had made calls from New York, mobilizing his network. In the 15 months since their divorce, she'd almost forgotten what his influence looked like in action, how doors opened, how impossible things became possible when Adrian Moreau wanted them to. More specialists arrived, a pediatric neurologist, an immunologist. They descended on Lucas's case with the intensity of a military operation, cross-referencing symptoms, debating treatment protocols. The small hospital room filled with expertise that would normally take days to assemble. And through it all, Evelyn sat in her chair watching her son receive care she could never have afforded, coordinated by a man who didn't yet know if he'd forgive her for keeping this secret. 2 hours and 40 minutes after her call, she heard commotion in the hallway. Authoritative voices, someone trying to enforce visiting hours, another voice cutting through regulations with the kind of certainty that made rules bend. Then Adrian walked through the door. 15 months since she'd last seen him, and Evelyn's body responded with unwanted recognition. He looked the same, tall and lean in dark clothing that probably cost more than her monthly rent. Silver threading through his black hair, eyes that missed nothing. But there was something different in his face now, a rawness that didn't usually show. His gaze swept the room, the monitors, the IV, the specialists clustered around Lucas's bed before landing on her. Evelyn. Just her name, but she heard volumes in it, accusation, anger, and underneath something that might have been pain. Adrian. She stood, instinctively positioning herself between him and Lucas, even though that protective gesture came 15 months too late. He moved toward the bed, and the specialist parted without question, recognizing authority when it entered a room. Adrian looked down at Lucas, his son, though the reality of that connection hadn't fully settled, and Evelyn watched his expression shift through calculations she couldn't read. Tell me everything. He didn't look away from the baby as he spoke. Dr. Chen stepped forward, clearly the one Adrian had spoken with. We're running comprehensive tests for bacterial meningitis, sepsis, and several other serious infections. Preliminary results suggest a severe urinary tract infection that's progressed to bacteremia, bacteria in the bloodstream. We've started aggressive antibiotic treatment, but his fever isn't responding as quickly as we'd like. Prognosis? Adrian's voice remained steady, but Evelyn saw his hands curl into fists. Guarded. The next 12 to 24 hours will tell us if the antibiotics are effective. If the fever breaks and his vitals stabilize, we're looking at a week-long hospital stay. If not, Dr. Chen paused delicately. We'll need to escalate treatment. Whatever he needs, he gets. Whatever specialists, whatever equipment, whatever trials or experimental treatments exist, I want them available. Adrian finally looked away from Lucas to meet Dr. Chen's eyes. Money is not a factor. Time is. Make him better. We're doing everything medically possible, Mr. Moreau. Then do what's medically impossible. He said it without arrogance, just flat expectation that the universe would rearrange itself around his requirements. Dr. Chen nodded and returned to her team. Adrian stood beside Lucas's bed, watching the monitors, and Evelyn saw something she'd rarely witnessed during their marriage: uncertainty. He'd built an empire on control and calculation, but here was a problem that couldn't be solved through intimidation or strategy. How long were you pregnant when we divorced? His question came quietly, but she heard the blade edge beneath. 4 months. And you said nothing. You made it clear you didn't want children. You said it was too dangerous, too much liability. So you decided for both of us? Now he looked at her, and the anger she'd heard on the phone was there in full force. You decided I didn't deserve to know I had a son? You took my money and disappeared with my child. I took money I was entitled to in the divorce settlement, and I protected Lucas from a life I knew you wouldn't want for him. Evelyn kept her voice low, aware of the medical staff trying to pretend they weren't listening. I gave you the clean break you wanted. Did I say I wanted this? Adrian gestured toward Lucas. Did I say I wanted my son raised in poverty while you played at being a single mother? The accusation stung because it landed too close to truth. She'd been struggling, barely keeping her head above water financially while pretending she had everything under control. Lucas had everything he needed. Everything except his father. Everything except proper medical care, apparently, or we wouldn't be here. Adrian's eyes were cold now, the brief vulnerability she'd glimpsed disappearing behind his usual armor. You made choices that weren't yours to make. And you made it very clear what your priorities were: business, power, control. Evelyn felt her own anger rising to meet his. There was no room in that life for a child. I gave you exactly what you wanted: freedom from family obligations. You gave me lies. He said it quietly, but with such finality that it landed heavier than shouting. Everything about our marriage, everything you said when you left, it was all built on lies. Before Evelyn could respond, one of Lucas's monitors began alarming. Dr. Chen moved immediately, checking the readout. Temperature's spiking, 105.2. We need to cool him down now. The room transformed into controlled chaos. Cool packs applied to Lucas's small body. Additional medications administered. Evelyn tried to move closer, but a nurse gently guided her back. Adrian stood motionless, watching the team work, and Evelyn saw his jaw clench with the helplessness of someone accustomed to fixing everything. 10 minutes that felt like hours. Then Lucas's temperature began dropping, slowly, grudgingly, but moving in the right direction. The alarm silenced. The medical team stepped back, monitoring continuing. That was close, Dr. Chen said quietly. The antibiotics should start showing more effect soon. We just need to keep him stable until they do. Adrian nodded once, then turned back to Evelyn. We're not done with this conversation, but right now, he's the priority. He's always been my priority. She said it with quiet force. Everything I did was to protect him. By hiding him from me. By denying him resources that could have prevented this? Adrian shook his head. Your protection nearly killed him. The words hit like a physical blow, partly because Evelyn had been thinking the same thing. If she'd told Adrian from the beginning, Lucas would have had the best pediatricians, constant monitoring, immediate intervention at the first sign of illness. Her pride, her fear, her need for independence, all of it had put their son at risk. You're right. The admission came hard. I made mistakes, but I can't change the past. You can only deal with the consequences. Adrian cut her off. Starting with the fact that I'm not leaving. Not now, not when he's released, not ever. You brought me into this, Evelyn. You don't get to shut me out again. Before she could respond, his phone buzzed. He glanced at it, his expression darkening. I need to make some calls, security issues I need to address. He looked at her. Stay with him. I'll be back in 30 minutes. He left the room and Evelyn sank back into her chair, the weight of the past few hours crushing down on her. This was her life now. Not the quiet independence she'd built. Not the simple existence with just her and Lucas. Adrian was here, would remain here, bringing with him all the complications and dangers she'd fled. But as she watched the monitors showing Lucas's vitals slowly stabilizing, watched the team of specialists Adrian had mobilized working to save their son, she couldn't fully regret the call she'd made. She'd do anything to protect Lucas, even if it meant destroying the life she'd built, even if it meant letting Adrian back into her world, even if it meant facing consequences she couldn't yet imagine. The night stretched ahead, monitors beeping steady rhythms, specialists conferring in low voices. Evelyn held Lucas's small hand, feeling the heat that still radiated from his skin, and whispered promises she hoped she could keep. Outside the window, Boston continued its ordinary Friday night. But in this hospital room, everything had changed. The secret was out, the past had caught up with the present. And whatever came next, there was no going back. Adrian returned 47 minutes later, his expression carved from granite. He'd shed his coat somewhere, rolled his shirt sleeves to his elbows. Small concessions to the long night ahead. When he entered Lucas's room, his eyes went immediately to the monitors, reading the numbers with an intensity that suggested he'd already memorized what each should display. Temperature's down to 102.8, Evelyn said quietly. Dr. Chen thinks the antibiotics are starting to work. Starting isn't enough. Adrian moved to the opposite side of Lucas's bed, maintaining distance from Evelyn but positioning himself where he could watch their son's face. Where's Chen now? Reviewing latest lab results, she said she'd update us within the hour. They fell into silence, the kind that stretched with 15 months of separation and 7 months of secrets between them. The monitors beeped their steady rhythm. Nurses came and went, checking IV lines and making notes on tablets. Through it all, Adrian stood motionless, watching Lucas with an expression Evelyn couldn't decipher. Finally, he spoke. Tell me about him. What do you want to know? Everything. When was he born? What is he like? Does he sleep through the night? Adrian's voice remained controlled, but she heard the hunger beneath. You had 7 months with him that I didn't. I want those months back. Evelyn looked down at Lucas, at the dark hair so like Adrian's, at the small features that were still forming into whatever person he'd become. He was born July 15th, 7 pounds, 3 ounces. Labor was 18 hours. You were alone? I had a doula, a woman named Maria who worked with uninsured mothers. The memory felt distant now, like something that had happened to someone else. She was kind. Adrian's jaw tightened. You should have had the best obstetric team in the country. Private suite, every possible precaution. I had what I could afford. And it was fine. Lucas was healthy. Evelyn paused. Is healthy, will be healthy. Don't make promises you can't keep. But some of the edge had left his voice. What else? So she told him. How Lucas had started smiling at 6 weeks, how his laugh sounded like water over stones, how he loved the mobile she'd made, would track the paper cranes with serious concentration, how he just started sitting up on his own, wobbling but determined, how he hated carrots but would eat sweet potato until he turned orange. Small details, ordinary moments that made up the architecture of their son's short life. Adrian listened without interruption, his eyes never leaving Lucas's face, and Evelyn wondered what he was thinking, whether he was calculating everything he'd missed or everything she'd stolen from him, or something else entirely. He has your eyes, Adrian said finally. I noticed that immediately. Evelyn looked at Lucas's closed lids, remembering how those eyes, gray-green like stormy seas, had looked at her this morning before the fever took hold. He has your stubbornness. When he wants something, he doesn't quit. Sounds familiar. The ghost of something that might have been humor crossed Adrian's face, then disappeared. What were you planning to do? Raise him alone indefinitely? Never tell me? I don't know. The honest answer. I thought maybe when he was older, when you'd moved on completely, I could reach out. Let you meet him without the complication of what? Co-parenting? Shared custody? Adrian's voice sharpened again. You were going to let me be an occasional visitor in my own son's life? I was trying to protect him from your world, from the danger and violence, and you think your world was safer? Living paycheck to paycheck in Jamaica Plain? He gestured around the hospital room. If you told me you were pregnant, none of this would have happened. He'd have had regular checkups with the best pediatricians. They'd have caught this infection early. You don't know that. I know that wealth and access matter. I know that hiding from me put him at risk. Adrian's control was fracturing again, anger bleeding through the cracks. You made a choice that could have killed him, Evelyn. How am I supposed to forgive that? Before she could answer, Dr. Chen entered with 2 other specialists. Her expression was cautiously optimistic. Good news, his white blood cell count is dropping, which means the antibiotics are working. We've identified the bacteria, E. coli, which likely started as a urinary tract infection and spread to his bloodstream. She pulled up charts on her tablet. With continued aggressive treatment, I'm confident we can beat this. How confident? Adrian asked. 85, 90%. The next critical window is the next 6 hours. If his fever continues dropping and his vitals stabilize, we'll be out of immediate danger. And the other 10 to 15%? Dr. Chen met his gaze directly. There's always risk with bacteremia in infants. Complications can develop, septic shock, organ involvement, but I don't expect that here. Lucas is responding well. Adrian nodded once. I want hourly updates. Any change in his condition, I need to know immediately. Of course, Mr. Moreau. After the doctors left, Adrian pulled out his phone and made a call. Marcus, it's me. I need you to arrange something. He turned slightly away, but Evelyn could still hear. Find the best pediatric suite in this hospital and have it prepared for long-term stay. Also, I want private nursing staff, 2 shifts, round the clock. Run background checks on anyone who will have access to the room. Adrian, that's not necessary, Evelyn started. He held up one hand, silencing her while he continued. And Marcus, I need you here. Bring 2 men. We're staying in Boston until further notice. A pause. No, cancel everything. This is the priority now. He ended the call and looked at Evelyn. You don't get a vote on his medical care anymore. Not after the choices you've made. He's my son too. Then you should have thought about that before hiding him from his father. Adrian's eyes were cold. You wanted to do this alone? Congratulations, you've proven you can't. The words landed like blows, each one finding the guilt already pooling in Evelyn's chest. She wanted to fight back, to defend her choices, but exhaustion was catching up with her. She'd been awake for nearly 24 hours, running on adrenaline and fear. I need coffee, she said, standing abruptly. Watch him. I'm not going anywhere. She fled the room before Adrian could see the tears threatening. The hospital corridors stretched fluorescent and endless, all neutral colors and antiseptic smell. She found a break room with a coffee maker, poured a cup of something dark and bitter, and let herself shake. This was supposed to be different. She was supposed to have built a life where she was in control, where she made the decisions, where no one could override her authority. Instead, within hours of calling Adrian, she'd been pushed to the margins of Lucas's care. The specialists answered to Adrian. The nurses deferred to him. Even her own position as Lucas's mother felt secondary to his role as the man with resources and power. But wasn't that what she'd wanted when she made the call? Someone who could mobilize the kind of help Lucas needed? She couldn't have it both ways, couldn't ask for Adrian's intervention and then resent him for taking control. Ms. Carter? She turned to find a young woman in a security uniform standing in the doorway, professional demeanor, alert eyes that cataloged everything. Mr. Moreau asked me to ensure you had anything you needed. I'm Sarah, part of his security team. She offered a slight smile. Can I get you fresh coffee? Something to eat? You haven't left your son's side in hours. So Adrian had already deployed his people. Of course he had. I'm fine, thank you. Mr. Moreau also wanted me to inform you that arrangements are being made for a private suite. Should be ready within 2 hours. Sarah's tone remained neutral, but Evelyn heard the underlying message. This is happening whether you approve or not. Tell Mr. Moreau I said thank you. The words came out more tired than grateful. When Evelyn returned to Lucas's room, she found Adrian had pulled a chair close to the bed and was speaking quietly. She paused in the doorway, listening. Don't know if you can hear me, but your mother says you're stubborn, so I'm betting you're fighting this with everything you have. Adrian's voice was softer than Evelyn had heard it since he arrived. That's good. Fight. Get better. And when you're older, I'll tell you about the day I found out you existed, the day everything changed. He reached out, let his finger rest gently against Lucas's small palm. I'm your father, and I know that doesn't mean much to you right now, but it's going to. I promise you that. Evelyn's throat tightened. This was the Adrian she'd glimpsed occasionally during their marriage, the man beneath the armor, the one who felt things deeply but showed it rarely. She'd thought that man might not exist anymore, or had never existed outside her imagination. She cleared her throat quietly, announcing her presence. Adrian looked up, his expression shifting back to neutral. They're preparing a better room, he said. More space, better equipment. Sarah mentioned. Evelyn returned to her chair on the opposite side of Lucas's bed. Thank you. Don't thank me for doing what should have been done from the beginning. But some of the harshness had left his voice. How are you holding up? The question surprised her. I'm fine. You look exhausted. When did you last sleep? I don't know. Yesterday afternoon, maybe. Time had become fluid, measured only in Lucas's vital signs. Adrian studied her for a long moment. When we move to the new suite, there will be a bed for you, actual bed, not a hospital chair. You should use it. I need to stay close to him. The bed will be in the same room, and I'll be here. He said it like a vow. I'm not leaving him, which means you can rest. It was both reassurance and challenge, proof that she was no longer the only one responsible for Lucas's well-being. The thought should have relieved her, but instead it felt like losing ground. We need to talk about what happens after he's released, Evelyn said. We will, but not now. Adrian's attention returned to Lucas. Right now, all that matters is getting him healthy. An hour later, they transferred Lucas to the new suite, a private room that looked more like a luxury hotel than a hospital. 2 beds, a sitting area, windows that actually opened. The medical equipment was state-of-the-art, the monitoring systems more sophisticated than what they'd left behind. 2 nurses arrived with the transfer, both clearly experienced, both moving with the kind of confidence that came from working in elite medical settings. They introduced themselves as Diane and Patricia, explained they'd be rotating 12-hour shifts to provide constant care. Mr. Moreau arranged for us through Massachusetts General's private patient program, Diane explained as she connected Lucas to the new monitors. We specialize in high-risk pediatric cases. Of course, Adrian had found the best. That was what he did. Identified problems and threw resources at them until they bent to his will. Dr. Chen appeared to oversee the transition, checking that all Lucas's medications were properly transferred. This is much better, she said, approving. More space to work, better equipment for monitoring. Good thinking, Mr. Moreau. Whatever he needs, Adrian repeated his earlier mantra. As evening settled over Boston, Lucas's temperature continued its slow decline. 1016 by 7 p.m., 99.8 by 9. The antibiotics were working, his small body finally gaining ground against the infection. Evelyn watched the numbers drop with relief so intense it made her dizzy. He was going to be okay. The worst had passed. Around 10 p.m., Marcus arrived, Adrian's head of security, a man Evelyn remembered from her marriage. Tall, efficient, with eyes that never stopped calculating threats. He spoke quietly with Adrian near the door, and though Evelyn couldn't hear the conversation, she saw Adrian's expression darken. When Marcus left, Adrian returned to his position beside Lucas's bed, but remained standing, tension radiating from his frame. "What's wrong?" Evelyn asked. "Nothing that concerns Lucas directly, but something that concerns you." Adrian was silent for a moment, then, "There are people who'll see my absence from New York as opportunity. Problems I need to address remotely." He met her eyes. "But I meant what I said. I'm not leaving until he's out of danger. Your empire won't collapse if you're gone for a few days. My empire is built on the perception that I'm always in control, always watching." A muscle worked in his jaw. "When people think you're distracted, they get brave." Evelyn understood what he wasn't saying, that coming here, prioritizing Lucas, had shown weakness to people who looked for such things, that Adrian's enemies would see this as exactly the kind of liability he'd always avoided. "I'm sorry," she said quietly. "I know this complicates things for you." "Don't apologize for our son existing." Adrian's voice was sharp. "Apologize for hiding him, that I can't forgive easily. But Lucas himself?" He looked down at the sleeping baby. "He's not a complication. He stopped, seeming to struggle with words. Finally, "He's everything I didn't know I wanted." The admission hung in the air between them, raw and honest. Evelyn saw past the anger and control to something that looked like wonder, like fear, like love trying to take root in unsuitable soil. "He looks like you when he's sleeping," she said softly. Same serious expression, like he's solving problems in his dreams. "Does he cry a lot?" "Normal amount. But he stops if you hold him and walk around. He likes motion." "What about doctor visits, vaccinations?" "All up to date. I took him to a community clinic in Dorchester. They worked with uninsured mothers, sliding scale payments." Evelyn saw Adrian's expression darken. "I know it wasn't what you would have chosen, but they were good to us. He's my son. He should have had the best from the beginning." Adrian's hands curled into fists again. "You had options, Evelyn. You had money from the settlement. You could have afforded better care. I was trying to make that money last. I didn't know how long I'd need it to—" "You were being stubborn, proving you could do it alone even if it meant Lucas suffered for your pride." The accusation stung because it held truth. She had been stubborn, had stretched resources when she could have spent more freely, but she'd also been terrified of running out of money, of failing, of having to crawl back to Adrian and admit she couldn't make it on her own. "I did the best I could," she said. "Your best nearly killed him." Adrian said it quietly, but the words cut deep. "That's what you need to understand. Your choices had consequences." Evelyn felt tears burning behind her eyes, but refused to let them fall. "So what happens now? You take over completely? I become some kind of visitor in my own son's life? What happens now is we figure out how to do this together, whether we want to or not." Adrian finally sat down, exhaustion showing in the movement. I'm not trying to replace you, but I'm not stepping aside either. Lucas deserves both his parents. In what capacity? You live in New York. I live here. Your life is dangerous. Mine is unstable, barely sustainable. He said it without cruelty, just stating facts. You can't afford this apartment long term. You're freelancing for inconsistent income. One medical emergency, which just happened, and your entire situation collapses. I would have figured it out by calling me, which you did. Adrian leaned forward. So let's skip the part where you pretend you don't need help. You made that call because Lucas needed resources you don't have. That situation hasn't changed. What are you suggesting? I'm suggesting we be realistic. Lucas needs stability, security, the best possible care. I can provide those things. You're his mother. That's not negotiable, and I wouldn't want it to be. But the current arrangement isn't sustainable. Evelyn's chest tightened. You want custody. I want my son to have everything he deserves. If that means we need to renegotiate how this works, then that's what we do. Adrian's eyes were steady on hers. I'm not the enemy here, Evelyn. I'm his father, trying to do right by him. By taking him away from me? By making sure he never ends up in an emergency room again because his mother was too proud to ask for help sooner. The words landed hard. We can work together or we can fight this out in court. Your choice. The threat was clear, wrapped in reasonable language. Adrian had unlimited resources for legal battles. She had $1,100 in savings and a freelance career she couldn't maintain while caring for an infant. Before she could respond, Lucas stirred, making a small sound. Both Evelyn and Adrian immediately focused on him, watching as his eyes fluttered open for the first time in hours. Hey, baby, Evelyn whispered, moving closer. Lucas's gaze wandered, unfocused, then landed on her face. Recognition flickered there, and his small features relaxed slightly. That's right. It's Mama. You're okay. You're going to be okay. She touched his cheek gently, careful of the IV line. Adrian stood, positioning himself where Lucas could see him. The baby's eyes tracked to this new presence, studying the unfamiliar face with serious attention. Lucas, this is... Evelyn hesitated. What did she call Adrian? Your father felt too simple for the complexity of the situation. I'm Adrian, he said quietly, his voice gentler than Evelyn had heard since he arrived. I'm going to be around a lot from now on. Lucas stared at him with that solemn infant gaze, processing whatever infants processed when encountering strangers. Then he yawned, his small face scrunching, and closed his eyes again. He's tired, Evelyn said unnecessarily. The fever took a lot out of him. Adrian settled back into his chair but didn't look away from Lucas. But he's fighting, stronger than he looks. They sat in silence, watching their son sleep, and Evelyn felt the weight of their situation pressing down. Everything had changed in the span of hours. The life she'd built, careful, controlled, separate, had collapsed the moment she dialed Adrian's number. Around midnight, Diane quietly suggested that Evelyn should rest. He's stable now, temperature normal. Best thing you can do is take care of yourself so you can be alert tomorrow. Evelyn wanted to argue, but exhaustion was making her thoughts fuzzy. She looked at the second bed in the suite, then at Adrian. I'll wake you if anything changes, he said, answering her unspoken question. I promise. She believed him. Whatever else Adrian was, controlling, dangerous, unforgiving, he kept his promises. It was one of the things she'd learned during their marriage, one of the few constants in his otherwise unpredictable nature. Okay, she said finally, but if his temperature spikes, if anything, I'll wake you immediately. Adrian's tone left no room for doubt. Evelyn moved to the second bed, not bothering to undress, just lying down on top of the covers. Her body felt leaden, every muscle protesting the hours of tension. She closed her eyes, intending to rest for just a moment. When she woke, pale winter light was filtering through the windows. She sat up abruptly, disoriented, then remembered where she was. Adrian sat in the same chair, in what looked like the same position, watching Lucas sleep. But his clothes were rumpled now, his hair less perfect. He looked like he hadn't moved all night. You stayed up? Evelyn's voice came out rough. He glanced at her. Someone needed to watch him. The nurses are competent, but he's my son. I wanted to be the one watching. Adrian stretched slightly, muscles clearly stiff from hours of stillness. His temperature stayed normal all night. Dr. Chen checked in at 6 a.m. She's very pleased with his progress. Evelyn looked at the monitors, confirming what Adrian said. Normal temperature, heart rate steady, breathing regular. Relief washed through her again, the fear that had gripped her for the past day finally beginning to release. "Thank you," she said quietly, "for staying, for everything you mobilized to help him." Adrian studied her for a long moment. "I would have done all of this from the beginning if you'd let me, but we can't change the past. We can only figure out the future." The future. That looming question they'd been circling around. Before Evelyn could respond, her phone buzzed with a text. Her landlord again, this time more insistent about next month's rent. The ordinary world intruding on their hospital bubble. Adrian noticed her expression. Problems? Just life. Bills, responsibilities. She put the phone away. Nothing that matters right now. Everything matters. He stood, moving to look out the window at Boston's morning skyline. "You can't keep pretending you have this under control, Evelyn. Not anymore." "What do you want from me? To admit I'm struggling? Fine, I'm struggling. I can barely afford my apartment. I'm behind on bills. I've been taking whatever freelance work I can find and hoping it's enough." The words came out bitter. "Is that what you wanted to hear?" "I wanted honesty," which is apparently too much to ask. He turned to face her. "Here's what's going to happen. When Lucas is released, you're not going back to that apartment." "Excuse me?" "I've already arranged a place in Beacon Hill. 3 bedrooms, security, close to the best pediatric care in the city." Adrian said it like he was discussing weather. "You and Lucas will move in today. I'll have your current apartment packed, and you can't just decide where I live." "I can when your current situation is inadequate for raising my son." His voice remained calm, maddeningly reasonable. "You can accept this help, or we can discuss custody arrangements in court. Your choice." Evelyn stared at him, anger and helplessness warring in her chest. This was Adrian at his most dangerous, not threatening or violent, just calmly rearranging the world to suit his requirements. This isn't help, this is control. Call it whatever you want. It's happening. He moved back toward Lucas's bed. "I've already missed 7 months of his life. I'm not missing any more because you're too stubborn to accept reality." "And what reality is that?" Adrian looked at her with eyes that had built an empire through force of will. "That you need me. That Lucas needs me. That whether you like it or not, we're in this together now." The words hung between them, truth and threat, reality and ultimatum. And Evelyn knew, with sinking certainty, that her life as she'd built it was over. The argument might have escalated further, but Dr. Chen arrived for morning rounds with her team of specialists. She examined Lucas thoroughly, reviewing overnight vitals and lab results with the kind of focused attention that made Evelyn remember why Adrian had wanted her on the case. "Excellent progress," Dr. Chen announced, making notes on her tablet. "Temperature's been normal for 8 hours. White blood cell count is dropping steadily. I'm very encouraged by his response to treatment." "When can he go home?" Adrian asked. "Let's not rush. I want to keep him under observation for at least another 72 hours, make sure the infection is completely cleared. We'll continue IV antibiotics for 48 hours, then potentially switch to oral if everything looks good." She smiled at Lucas, who was awake now and tracking her movements with serious eyes. "But barring any setbacks, I'd say he's out of danger." Evelyn felt something loosen in her chest, a knot of fear she'd been carrying since finding Lucas burning with fever. He was going to be okay. Her baby was going to survive. After the medical team left, Adrian made several phone calls while Evelyn sat with Lucas, talking to him softly and stroking his dark hair. The baby seemed more alert this morning, following her voice, even offering a tentative smile when she made silly faces. "He's smiling," Evelyn said, wonder in her voice despite everything else happening. Adrian ended his call and came closer, watching. Lucas's gaze shifted to him, that same serious study from last night. Then, unexpectedly, the baby smiled at Adrian too, a real smile, not just gas or reflex. Something crossed Adrian's face that Evelyn had never seen before. Vulnerability mixed with fierce protectiveness, wonder tempered by fear. He reached out slowly, let Lucas grip his finger with surprising strength for someone so recently ill. "He's strong," Adrian said quietly. "He gets that from you. And stubborn from you, apparently." But there was no heat in the words now. Adrian kept his attention on Lucas, on this small person who'd rewritten both their futures in the span of a day. "I meant what I said earlier, about the apartment, about making sure he has what he needs." "I know you did. That's what scares me." Evelyn watched their son hold Adrian's finger like an anchor. "You're used to controlling everything, but Lucas isn't a business deal you can negotiate." "I'm aware of that." Adrian's voice carried an edge of frustration. "But I'm not going to apologize for wanting to provide for him, for wanting him safe and secure. At the cost of my independence?" "Your independence nearly killed him." He said it without cruelty, just flat honesty. "So yes, if it comes down to your pride or his well-being, I choose him. Every time." Before Evelyn could respond, Marcus appeared in the doorway, nodding to Adrian. "Sir, we need to discuss the situation." Adrian hesitated, clearly torn between staying with Lucas and addressing whatever crisis was developing. Finally, he looked at Evelyn. "I need 30 minutes. Don't leave this room." "Where would I go?" He left with Marcus, and Evelyn was alone with Lucas for the first time since Adrian's arrival. She lifted her son carefully, mindful of the IV line, and held him against her chest. He made small, contented sounds, his body warm but not feverish against hers. "I'm sorry," she whispered into his soft hair. "I thought I was protecting you, but Adrian's right. I almost got you killed. I was so focused on staying away from his world that I didn't see the dangers in mine." Lucas made a small noise, not understanding but responding to her voice. "He's going to change everything. Your father doesn't do anything halfway." She rocked gently, the motion automatic. "I don't know how to share you. I don't know how to let him in without losing myself completely." But wasn't that the real fear? Not that Adrian would take Lucas, but that Evelyn would disappear into the gravity of Adrian's life again. She'd fought so hard to become her own person after their divorce, to build an identity separate from being Mrs. Moreau. Now all of that felt threatened by his reappearance. Diane came in to check Lucas's vitals, her movements efficient and kind. "He's doing beautifully. Temperature's been stable all morning, and his appetite is coming back. That's an excellent sign." "When do you think we can remove the IV?" "Dr. Chen will make that call, but probably tomorrow if he continues improving." Diane smiled. "You should eat something too. There's a cafeteria on the second floor, or I can have something brought up." Evelyn realized she couldn't remember her last meal. "I should probably eat." "I'll stay with him. Take your time." But Evelyn didn't want to leave Lucas, even knowing he was safe with experienced care. The past day had rewired her instincts. She needed to see him, to confirm he was breathing, to verify the crisis had truly passed. She compromised by having food delivered to the room, eating mechanically while keeping Lucas in her line of sight. He dozed in his hospital crib, peaceful now, the monitors showing steady, normal rhythms that felt like miracles after yesterday's alarms. Adrian returned an hour later, his expression carefully neutral in a way that meant problems were brewing. He dismissed Marcus with a nod and moved to check on Lucas before turning to Evelyn. "We need to discuss security." "Security for what?" "For all of us. Word's gotten out that I have a son." Adrian's voice was tight with controlled anger. "My enemies are already calculating how to use that information." Evelyn's stomach dropped. This was what she'd feared when she found out she was pregnant, that any child of Adrian's would immediately become a target, a vulnerability to exploit. "How did word get out?" "We've been in the hospital less than 24 hours. I mobilized resources, pulled favors, made calls, moved personnel." He shook his head. "That kind of activity gets noticed. People make connections. And now there are questions about why I'm in Boston, why I'm not handling business in New York." "So what does that mean for Lucas?" "It means he needs protection, real protection, not just hoping nobody notices him." Adrian moved to the window, looking out at the city. "The Beacon Hill apartment I mentioned, it's more than just luxury. Security system, panic rooms, vetted staff. He'll be safe there." "You mean we'll be prisoners there?" "I mean you'll be alive there." He turned to face her. "You wanted to keep him away from my world, Evelyn. I understand that impulse. But the moment you called me, you pulled him into it anyway. Now we deal with reality. The words landed with devastating accuracy. She'd made the choice, desperate and necessary, and now they were all living with consequences. Who exactly are these enemies? Evelyn asked. What kind of threats are we talking about? Adrian was silent for a long moment, clearly debating how much to tell her. Finally, I have business rivals who would use any leverage against me. Some are sophisticated, corporate espionage, legal pressure. Others are more direct, kidnapping, violence, using family members to force cooperation. And you think they'd come after Lucas? I think they'd be fools not to consider it. A 7-month-old baby is the perfect pressure point. His jaw tightened. Which is why this conversation isn't negotiable. You and Lucas move to the secure apartment. You accept protection, or I file for emergency custody on grounds that you can't adequately ensure his safety. Evelyn felt trapped, walls closing in from every direction. You'd really do that? Take him from me? I'd do whatever necessary to keep him alive. Adrian's eyes held hers without flinching. I already missed 7 months because of your choices. I won't risk losing him permanently because you're too stubborn to accept help. This isn't help. This is imprisonment. Call it whatever you want. It's happening. They stared at each other across the hospital room, Lucas sleeping peacefully between them, oblivious to how drastically his world was shifting. Evelyn broke first, turning away. I need air. Don't go far, and take Sarah with you. Adrian nodded toward the security guard stationed outside their door. I don't need a babysitter. You have one anyway. Get used to it. She wanted to argue, to assert her independence, but exhaustion and reality were wearing her down. Instead, she grabbed her coat and left, Sarah falling into step behind her with professional discretion. The hospital corridors felt claustrophobic after hours in Lucas's room. Evelyn found a stairwell and climbed to the roof access, a habit from her teenage years when she needed to think. Sarah stayed by the door, giving her space while maintaining visual contact. Boston stretched out below, gray sky pressing down on gray buildings. February cold bit through her coat, but Evelyn welcomed the discomfort. It felt real, grounding, unlike the surreal situation unfolding in her life. Her phone buzzed. Text from her former college roommate, someone she hadn't spoken to in over a year. Saw the news about Adrian Moreau having a secret son. Is that you? Are you okay? So it was already public, the carefully guarded secret she'd maintained for 15 months, exposed within a day of Adrian's involvement. More texts followed. Former friends, distant relatives, even a reporter somehow finding her number. Everyone suddenly interested in her life now that it intersected with Adrian's again. Evelyn deleted them all without responding. She had no answers to give, no public statement prepared. Her life had become a spectacle, and she had no idea how to navigate it. When she returned to Lucas's room, she found Adrian on a video call, his tone sharp as he addressed someone on screen. I don't care about the optics. Reschedule the meeting. I'm in Boston until further notice, and that's final. He ended the call when he saw her, his expression shifting from commanding to cautiously neutral. Better? Not really. Evelyn moved to Lucas's crib, needing to reassure herself he was still there, still safe. It's already public. People are calling, texting. The secret's completely out. I know. My PR team is handling it. Adrian stood, coming to stand beside her. Official statement says I have a son from a previous relationship, that he's currently hospitalized but expected to make a full recovery, and that I'm requesting privacy during this time. Previous relationship, that's one way to describe a marriage. Evelyn heard the bitterness in her own voice. Would you prefer I announce our divorce and your decision to hide my son for 7 months? That would generate better headlines. His tone was dry. I'm trying to control the narrative, protect Lucas from media scrutiny, while simultaneously announcing his existence to every criminal who might want to use him against you. They would have found out eventually, better to control when and how. Adrian's logic was sound, even if Evelyn hated it. At least this way we set the terms. Patricia arrived for her shift, smoothly transitioning with Diane. The private nurses moved with choreographed efficiency, checking Lucas's vitals and medication schedule. Everything running like a machine Adrian had set in motion. Dr. Chen appeared late afternoon with more positive results. His fever's been gone for 24 hours. Blood work is trending in exactly the right direction, Barring any surprises, we'll discontinue IV antibiotics tomorrow and observe for another day. If he remains stable, you can take him home Sunday. To the apartment in Beacon Hill, Adrian said, as if it were already decided. Dr. Chen glanced between them, clearly sensing tension, but professionally staying out of it. Wherever home is, he'll need follow-up care. Pediatrician visits weekly for the first month, then regular checkups. I'll provide recommendations. After she left, Adrian turned to Evelyn. We should discuss logistics. What's there to discuss? You've already made all the decisions. I've made the ones you forced me to make by creating an unsafe situation. His patience was clearly wearing thin. But I'm not unreasonable. You want input on how this works? Then let's talk. Evelyn sat down, suddenly too tired to keep fighting. Fine, talk. Adrian pulled up a chair, positioning himself where they could both watch Lucas. The Beacon Hill apartment has 3 bedrooms. You and Lucas take the master suite. It's larger, has an attached bathroom, space for nursery furniture. I'll take one of the other rooms when I'm in Boston. When you're in Boston, you're planning to commute? I have businesses to run in New York. I can't abandon everything indefinitely. He paused. But I'll be here more than I'm there, at least initially, until we establish stable routines. And what happens when you're not here? I'm just locked in that apartment with security guards? You're free to come and go, with appropriate protection. Adrian's tone suggested this should be obvious. Sarah or one of the other team members accompanies you. Non-negotiable. So I'm free, as long as I accept constant surveillance. You're alive as long as you accept necessary precautions. He met her eyes steadily. I know you hate this, but I'm not willing to gamble with Lucas's safety just to preserve your sense of independence. Evelyn wanted to argue, but what could she say? That she'd rather risk danger than accept Adrian's protection? That her freedom mattered more than their son's security? She couldn't make those arguments honestly. What about my work? She asked instead. I have freelance commitments, deadlines. Work from the apartment. I'll have an office space set up for you, high-speed internet, whatever equipment you need. Adrian gestured dismissively. Money's not an issue. If you need to turn down projects to focus on Lucas, do it. I can't just live off your money. Why not? You took the divorce settlement. That was different. That was compensation for... She stopped, not wanting to finish that sentence. For putting up with me? Adrian's expression was unreadable. Consider this the same thing. Compensation for dealing with the consequences of being connected to me. They sat in silence for a moment, Lucas's peaceful breathing the only sound. Finally, Evelyn asked the question that had been building since Adrian's arrival. What do you actually want from this situation? From me? From Lucas? From all of it? Adrian was quiet for so long she thought he might not answer. When he spoke, his voice carried an honesty she wasn't expecting. I want to be his father, really be his father, not just a name on legal documents or someone who sends money. He looked at Lucas with that same fierce protectiveness. I want to see him grow up. I want to be there for his first steps, first words, all of it. Everything I already missed. And me? I want you to stop fighting me on every decision. I want you to recognize that we're on the same side here, both trying to do what's best for him. Adrian's gaze shifted to her. I'm not trying to punish you, Evelyn. I'm just trying to keep our son safe. It feels like punishment, like you're taking over my entire life as payback for hiding him. Then that's your guilt talking, not my intention. He said it without sympathy. You made choices that hurt me, that put Lucas at risk. I'm making choices to fix that. They're not the same thing. Before Evelyn could respond, Lucas woke with a small cry, not distressed, just announcing he was ready for attention. Both she and Adrian moved simultaneously, then stopped, each waiting for the other. You take him, Adrian said finally. I'll get his bottle ready. It was a small moment of coordination, but it felt significant. Maybe this was how they'd have to do it, finding small ways to work together, building trust in increments. Evelyn lifted Lucas, settling him against her shoulder. He was definitely more alert than yesterday, making small sounds and moving with more energy. The antibiotics were working. Her baby was healing. Adrian returned with a bottle, formula mixed precisely, temperature tested. He'd clearly been paying attention to how Evelyn prepared it. Another small detail that felt important. You want to feed him? Evelyn offered. Adrian hesitated, uncertainty crossing his face for the first time since his arrival. I haven't done this before. Sit down, I'll show you. He settled into the chair, and Evelyn carefully transferred Lucas to his arms, adjusting the position until father and son were properly aligned. Adrian held Lucas with cautious care, like handling something infinitely precious and breakable. Support his head. That's right. Now bring the bottle to his mouth. Let him set the pace. Lucas latched onto the bottle immediately, drinking with the enthusiasm of someone feeling better. Adrian watched him with an expression Evelyn couldn't quite read. Wonder mixed with fear, love fighting with the knowledge of all he'd missed. He's beautiful, Adrian said quietly. He is. Evelyn stood nearby, watching them. He has your coloring, my eyes. Your serious expression when he's thinking. What else should I know about him? Habits, preferences, things that scare him? So Evelyn told him. How Lucas loved bath time but hated getting his face washed. How he slept better with white noise in the background. How he was fascinated by ceiling fans and would stare at them for endless minutes. Small details that made up the architecture of their son's personality. Adrian listened intently, storing information like he was preparing for a crucial business meeting, which in a way, he was. The most important meeting of his life. Learning how to be a father. When Lucas finished eating, Adrian burped him with guidance from Evelyn, looking absurdly pleased when the baby produced a satisfying belch. Good job, Evelyn said, and wasn't sure if she meant Lucas or Adrian. The afternoon dissolved into strange domesticity. They took turns holding Lucas, changed his diaper together with Evelyn teaching Adrian the mechanics, talked quietly about schedules and needs. It felt almost normal, like they were any parents caring for a sick child. But normalcy was an illusion. Evening brought another visit from Marcus, his expression grave as he spoke quietly with Adrian near the door. Sir, we have a situation. Adrian's entire demeanor shifted, the brief softness disappearing behind his usual armor. What kind? Federal agents. They're asking questions about your movements, your associates. Marcus kept his voice low. Nothing directly threatening, but it's coordinated. Multiple field offices making simultaneous inquiries. They're using Lucas as justification for investigation. Appears so. New angle to pursue connections they haven't been able to prove before. Marcus glanced at Evelyn, clearly uncomfortable discussing this in front of her. They'll probably want to talk to Ms. Carter. Not happening. Adrian's voice went cold. She has nothing to tell them. Adrian, if federal agents want to question me, I can't just refuse, Evelyn started. You can, and you will. They're fishing, trying to use my son's hospitalization as leverage. He turned to Marcus. Get our attorneys prepared. If anyone approaches Evelyn or tries to use Lucas in their investigation, I want immediate legal intervention. After Marcus left, the tension in the room had shifted. The brief peace shattered by reminders of the complex, dangerous world Adrian inhabited. This is exactly what I was trying to avoid, Evelyn said. Federal investigations, legal complications. This is exactly why you needed me involved. Adrian cut her off. You think you could have handled federal agents alone, protected Lucas from that kind of scrutiny without resources or legal support? I wouldn't have needed to if I'd stayed away from you entirely. Except you didn't stay away. You called me, and now we both deal with the consequences. He moved to the window, tension radiating from his frame. The agents are just testing, seeing if they can find new pressure points. They won't get anywhere. How can you be sure? Because I'm very careful about what can be proven, and because I have excellent attorneys who specialize in making problems disappear. He said it matter-of-factly, without shame. This is my world, Evelyn. It's ugly and complicated, but I know how to navigate it. And you want to bring Lucas into this world? I want to protect Lucas in this world. There's a difference. Adrian turned to face her. You can't hide him from reality. You tried that, and it failed. So now we try my way. Acknowledge the threats and build defenses against them. Evelyn sank into a chair, exhaustion and defeat washing over her. I don't know how to do this. How to be his mother in your world. The same way you were his mother in yours. You love him, protect him, make choices for his well-being. Adrian's voice softened slightly. The difference is now you have help. Resources. support you didn't have before. And control. Don't forget control. Control over safety, yes, because someone has to make hard decisions, and you've proven you're willing to sacrifice his security for your independence. The words were harsh but delivered without heat. I'm not trying to be cruel. I'm trying to keep him alive. Lucas chose that moment to fuss, disrupting the tense conversation. Evelyn went to him automatically, lifting him from the crib and settling him against her shoulder. He quieted immediately, responding to her familiar presence. Adrian watched them, and Evelyn saw longing in his expression, the desire to be equally necessary, equally comforting. But that would take time. Trust built through repetition, through proving he'd be there when needed. He'll learn to trust you, Evelyn said quietly. It just takes consistency. I plan to be very consistent. Night settled over Boston. Patricia monitored Lucas's vitals while Evelyn and Adrian maintained careful distance, orbiting their son like planets around a sun. Around 9 p.m., Evelyn's phone rang. Unknown number. She almost didn't answer, but something made her pick up. Miss Carter, this is Special Agent Jennifer Walsh, FBI. I'd like to ask you some questions about Adrian Moreau. Evelyn's eyes met Adrian's across the room. He was already moving, hand out for the phone. I'm sorry, Agent Walsh. I can't talk right now. Ms. Carter, we're conducting an investigation that's very important. Your cooperation could... Adrian took the phone gently from Evelyn's hand. Agent Walsh, this is Adrian Moreau. My attorney's name is David Chen at Chen & Associates in Manhattan. All questions should go through him. Do not contact Ms. Carter again. He ended the call, handed the phone back. They're already circling, Adrian said quietly. This is just the beginning. And Evelyn realized with sinking certainty that her life would never be simple again. The call from Agent Walsh changed something fundamental in the room. What had been theoretical danger, Adrian's warnings about enemies and threats, suddenly felt concrete and immediate. Federal investigation meant scrutiny, questions, the possibility of Evelyn being pulled into legal battles she didn't understand. Adrian made 3 more calls that night, his voice clipped and authoritative as he mobilized his legal team. Evelyn caught fragments of conversation, terms like witness protection protocols and non-disclosure agreements, and limiting exposure. Each phrase felt like another door closing, another layer of complexity wrapping around her life. When he finally set his phone down, it was nearly midnight. Lucas had been sleeping peacefully for an hour, his vitals steady and strong. The crisis that had brought them here felt distant now, replaced by new emergencies of a different kind. Your attorney is flying in tomorrow, Adrian said. David Chen, best defense lawyer on the East Coast. He'll brief you on how to handle any further federal contact. I don't need a defense lawyer. I haven't done anything wrong. You're connected to me. That's enough. Adrian's expression was grim. The FBI has been trying to build a case against my business operations for 3 years. They found nothing substantial because there's nothing to find. I'm careful about staying on the right side of legal lines, but that won't stop them from using you as leverage. What exactly do they think you've done? Money laundering, racketeering, conspiracy charges. He said it without emotion. Standard accusations they throw at anyone with significant wealth and business dealings they can't fully trace. Most of it's speculation based on associations rather than actual evidence. Most of it? Evelyn caught the qualifier. Adrian met her eyes steadily. My business operates in gray areas sometimes. Investments that skirt regulatory boundaries, partnerships with people whose backgrounds don't hold up to scrutiny. Nothing illegal, but nothing completely clean either. He paused. I'm not a criminal, Evelyn, but I'm not innocent in the way you probably want me to be. The honesty was unexpected. During their marriage, Adrian had kept his business dealings carefully separate from their personal life. She'd known the broad strokes, real estate development, investment portfolios, consulting firms, but never the details. She told herself she didn't want to know. And now the FBI thinks Lucas gives them leverage to flip you? Make you cooperate with their investigation? Or they think you might have information they can use. Conversations you overheard, documents you might have seen, connections you could testify about. Adrian's voice was matter of fact. They'll try to scare you, make you think cooperation is your only option. That's why you need David Chen. He'll make sure you don't get manipulated into saying things that could be twisted. Evelyn looked at their son, sleeping peacefully while his parents navigated increasingly dangerous waters. This is insane. A week ago, my biggest problem was making rent. Now I need a defense attorney? Welcome to my world. There was no satisfaction in Adrian's tone, just tired acknowledgement. This is what I was trying to protect you from during our marriage. Why I kept business and personal life separate. But you called me, and now there's no separation anymore. So this is my fault? The FBI investigation is my fault? The investigation was always there, you just weren't relevant to it before. He softened slightly. I'm not blaming you for calling. You had to. But actions have consequences, and we're living them now. Patricia appeared to check Lucas's midnight vitals, her presence a reminder that life continued in its routines despite everything else spiraling. She pronounced him stable, fever-free for 36 hours, progressing beautifully. After she left, Evelyn found herself asking the question she'd been avoiding. If you could go back, knowing what you know now, would you want me to have called you? Adrian didn't answer immediately. He moved to Lucas's crib, looking down at their sleeping son with an expression that held too many emotions to parse. Yes, he finally said, even with all the complications, even knowing what it's cost both of us. He touched Lucas's small hand gently. I would never choose not to know he exists. Whatever else happens, he's worth it. The words settled something in Evelyn's chest. Whatever anger existed between them, whatever disagreements about control and independence, Adrian genuinely wanted their son, not as a possession or leverage, but as a father who'd discovered love he hadn't known he was capable of feeling. I'm sorry, she said quietly, for not telling you when I found out I was pregnant, for making that decision alone. Adrian looked at her across Lucas's crib. Why did you? Really? Evelyn gathered her thoughts, trying to articulate fears that had driven her choices. Because during our marriage, you were so certain about not wanting children. You said it would complicate everything, make you vulnerable. And I saw how you lived, always watching for threats, always calculating risks. I didn't want to bring a baby into that. So you brought him into poverty instead. I brought him into normalcy, or what I thought could be normal. She gestured helplessly. I wanted him to have a childhood without security details and FBI investigations. I wanted him to go to regular schools, have regular friends, live a regular life. There's no such thing as regular when your father is Adrian Moreau. You were living in a fantasy. But his tone wasn't cruel, just realistic. Lucas was always going to be connected to my world. Hiding him just delayed the inevitable. I know that now. They stood in silence, the hospital room quiet except for the rhythmic beep of monitors. Finally, Adrian spoke again. During our marriage, I told you I didn't want children because I believed it. I thought family was a weakness I couldn't afford. He kept his eyes on Lucas. But that was before I knew what it felt like. Before I understood that some things matter more than strategy and control. What changed? Nothing. Everything. He shook his head. I'm still the same person. I still have enemies, still operate in dangerous spaces. But looking at him, knowing he's mine, it makes all my careful calculations feel hollow, like I've been optimizing for the wrong variables. Evelyn heard the vulnerability beneath his words, the admission that Lucas had cracked open something Adrian usually kept sealed tight. So what do we do? How do we give him any kind of normal childhood when your world is what it is? We don't give him normal. We give him protected, educated, prepared. Adrian's voice firmed with decision. He'll grow up knowing his father's business, understanding the complexities and dangers. He'll have security training, learn how to spot threats, know who to trust. It's not the childhood you wanted for him, but it's the one that keeps him alive. The vision Adrian painted was so different from what Evelyn had imagined. Her son growing up in sunshine and innocence, protected from harsh realities. But maybe that had always been naive. Maybe children of powerful people never got that kind of childhood. He's 7 months old, she said. Can we at least let him be a baby before we start training him for your world? Of course, but we also start building the infrastructure now. Security, legal protections, education trusts that can't be touched. Adrian pulled out his phone, already making notes. I'll have my estate attorney draw up documents. Lucas needs to be protected legally, financially, every way possible. Evelyn wanted to argue that they should focus on immediate concerns, getting Lucas healthy, establishing routines, but she recognized the futility. Adrian was already 5 steps ahead, planning for contingencies she hadn't considered. Her phone buzzed again. Another unknown number. She didn't answer, just showed Adrian the screen. "They're persistent," he observed. "David will handle it. In the meantime, don't answer calls from numbers you don't recognize. If anyone approaches you in person, refer them to legal counsel and walk away." What if they don't take no for an answer? Then Sarah or whoever's with you intervenes. That's what they're there for. Adrian's expression hardened. Federal agents can be aggressive when they want information. They'll try to catch you alone, claim they just want to talk. Don't engage. You have constitutional rights. Use them. The idea of federal agents stalking her felt surreal, like something from a movie rather than her actual life. But this was her life now. This was the cost of that desperate phone call from the hospital. Around 2 a.m., Evelyn finally accepted she needed sleep. The past 48 hours were catching up with her, exhaustion making her thoughts fuzzy. Adrian had claimed the chair beside Lucas's crib, showing no signs of planning to rest. "You should sleep too," Evelyn said. "I will. Eventually." He didn't look away from Lucas. "Right now, I'm exactly where I need to be." Evelyn settled into the second bed, but sleep came reluctantly. Her mind kept circling the same thoughts. Federal investigations, security threats, the life she'd built disintegrating around her. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw Agent Walsh's name on her phone screen, heard Adrian's warnings about danger. Somewhere around 4 a.m., she heard Adrian's phone ring. His voice was low as he answered, but she caught fragments through her half-sleep state. "How bad?" "I don't care about optics. I care about containment." "No, absolutely not. If they try that approach, shut it down immediately." Silence as he listened. "Then we go harder. I want every legal avenue pursued, every regulatory complaint filed. Make them understand that targeting my family has consequences." His voice carried cold fury. "I'm not negotiating on this, Marcus. Handle it." Evelyn opened her eyes, found Adrian standing by the window, silhouetted against Boston's night skyline. Even in profile, she could see the tension radiating from him. "What's happened?" she asked quietly. He turned, seeming unsurprised she was awake. "One of my competitors leaked information to a tabloid. Pictures of you and Lucas leaving your old apartment, speculation about our relationship, suggestions that you've been in hiding." "How did they get pictures? I've been so careful. Someone was watching your building, probably for weeks, waiting for something newsworthy." Adrian's jaw was tight. "They'll publish Sunday morning. My PR team is trying to negotiate the story down, but it's going to run." Evelyn felt sick. "What kind of speculation?" "That you were my mistress. That Lucas might not be mine. That you're trying to extort money through false paternity claims." He said it clinically, like reading a grocery list. Standard tabloid garbage designed to generate clicks. "We can prove he's yours. DNA test would give them exactly what they want. More story, more drama, more content to dissect." Adrian shook his head. "We don't engage. We release a simple statement confirming Lucas is my son, that his mother and I are cooperating to ensure his well-being, and that we're requesting privacy. Anything more just feeds the circus." I don't want Lucas's first appearance in public consciousness to be tabloid speculation about whether he's legitimate. "Neither do I. But we don't control that narrative anymore." Adrian moved back toward Lucas's crib. "The moment word leaked that I had a son, this became inevitable. We just manage the damage now." Evelyn got out of bed, too agitated to pretend sleep. "This is exactly what I was afraid of. Lucas becoming a spectacle, his childhood documented and dissected by strangers. He's the son of a wealthy, prominent businessman. There was never a version of his life that didn't include public interest." Adrian's voice was patient but firm. "You wanted normal. I understand that. But normal was never realistic. We work with reality, not fantasy." They stood on opposite sides of Lucas's crib, their son sleeping peacefully between them, unaware his life was already being negotiated and protected and shaped by forces beyond his understanding. "When I was pregnant, I used to imagine what kind of father you'd be," Evelyn said softly. I convinced myself you'd be controlling and distant, that Lucas would just be another asset you managed. And now? Now I see I was partially right. You are controlling. She paused. But you're not distant, and you don't see him as an asset. He's my son. That's not a business category. It's... Adrian stopped, searching for words. It's the only thing in my life that feels completely uncomplicated. I look at him, and there's no strategy, no calculation, just this fierce need to protect him from everything. Even from me? From your choices, when those choices put him at risk. He met her eyes. I'm not your enemy, Evelyn, but I'm not going to pretend your decisions haven't had consequences. Before she could respond, Lucas stirred, making small sounds that suggested he'd wake soon. Patricia appeared from the sitting area where she'd been monitoring quietly. He's probably hungry, she said. I'll get a bottle ready. They fell into the routine that was becoming familiar. Patricia preparing formula, Evelyn lifting Lucas, Adrian hovering nearby. The baby woke fully, looking at each of them in turn, and Evelyn wondered what he understood about the sudden expansion of his world. Adrian fed him this time, his movements more confident than yesterday. Lucas ate with enthusiasm, clearly feeling better, and made small, contented sounds between swallows. He trusts you already, Evelyn observed, or he just knows I have food. But Adrian looked pleased. Morning came gradually, winter sun struggling through clouds. Dr. Chen arrived early, clearly energized by Lucas's progress. This is exactly what we wanted to see, she announced after examination. Fever-free for 48 hours, eating well, alert and responsive. I think we can discontinue the IV today and switch to oral antibiotics. And he can go home tomorrow? Adrian asked. If he remains stable through today and tonight, yes. I want to see him back in my office in 3 days for follow-up, but barring any setbacks, you can take him home Sunday afternoon. After Dr. Chen left, the reality of that timeline settled over Evelyn. Tomorrow meant leaving this hospital bubble, meant actually moving into the Beacon Hill apartment Adrian had arranged, meant beginning whatever this new life would be. We should discuss household logistics, Adrian said, apparently thinking along the same lines. Staff, schedules, how we divide responsibilities. Staff? What kind of staff? Cook, housekeeper, night nurse for Lucas so you can sleep. Security detail you already know about. He said it like this should be obvious. The apartment is large. You can't maintain it alone while caring for an infant. I've been caring for him alone for 7 months. In a one-bedroom apartment with no help and barely surviving financially. Adrian's patience was clearly wearing thin again. This is not the same situation, accept the help. Evelyn wanted to fight, but exhaustion was winning. Fine. But I interview anyone who'll be around Lucas regularly. I need to approve them. Agreed. Marcus has already compiled profiles of candidates. You can review them today. Of course Marcus had already compiled profiles. Adrian's efficiency was both impressive and suffocating. Sarah appeared in the doorway, her expression apologetic. Ms. Carter, there's a woman in the lobby claiming to be your aunt. Hospital security won't let her up without confirmation. Evelyn's stomach dropped. She only had one aunt, her mother's sister Carol, who she hadn't spoken to in over 2 years. Tell them I'm not available. She's being quite insistent, says it's urgent family business. She wants money, Evelyn said flatly. That's the only time Carol considers anything urgent family business. Adrian looked at Sarah. Have security escort her from the building. If she returns, call the police. After Sarah left, Evelyn sank into a chair. This is going to keep happening, isn't it? People from my old life suddenly reappearing because they think I'm connected to your money. Yes, which is why we control who has access to you. Adrian's tone suggested this should be obvious. Family members get vetted like everyone else. If they're legitimate, fine. If they're opportunistic, they get cut off. You can't just cut off my family. I can when they're trying to exploit you. He pulled out his phone, typing rapidly. I'm having my attorneys draft cease and desist letters for anyone who harasses you or Lucas, family included. This is insane. This is necessary. Adrian looked up from his phone. You're not just Evelyn Carter anymore. You're the mother of my child, which makes you a target. Everyone who approaches you needs to be evaluated for ulterior motives. The weight of that reality pressed down on Evelyn. She couldn't even see her own family without security clearance. Her life had been completely absorbed into Adrian's world of protocols and protections. Lucas chose that moment to spit up slightly, baby formula dribbling down his chin. Both Evelyn and Adrian reached for him simultaneously, then stopped, caught in awkward coordination. "You take him," Adrian said. "I'll get a cloth." They cleaned Lucas up together, the domestic gesture feeling surreal against the backdrop of federal investigations and security protocols. This was their life now, moments of ordinary parenting interwoven with extraordinary complications. By afternoon, more news had broken. A business website published speculation about how Adrian's sudden family obligations might affect his corporate holdings. Stock analysts were weighing in on whether personal distractions would impact his business acumen. Everything becoming public consumption. "Turn it off," Adrian said when he caught Evelyn reading coverage on her phone. "None of that matters." "It matters to your business." "My business survived before Lucas. It'll survive after. Stock prices fluctuate. That's their nature." He took her phone, set it aside. "You need to stop reading about yourself. It's not healthy." "How do you handle it? Everyone having opinions about your life?" "I stopped caring what strangers think a long time ago." Adrian's voice was matter-of-fact. "The people whose opinions matter know the truth. Everyone else is just noise." That evening, David Chen arrived, a sharp-dressed man in his 50s with intelligent eyes and a handshake that communicated both confidence and warning. He spent an hour briefing Evelyn on how to handle federal contact, what rights she had, what mistakes to avoid. "If they approach you, you say exactly this: 'I'm represented by counsel and won't be speaking without my attorney present.'" David's tone was professorial. "Don't explain, don't justify, don't try to be helpful. Those instincts will be used against you." "But I don't have anything to hide." "Irrelevant. The FBI doesn't need you to have done anything wrong. They need you to say something they can interpret as incriminating Adrian." He handed her a card. "My number. If any federal agent, local police, or even building inspector tries to question you, you call me immediately." After David left, Evelyn felt like she'd been inducted into a secret society with rules she barely understood. Everything about her life now required protocols and procedures, layers of protection against threats she couldn't quite visualize. That night, as Boston settled into weekend quiet, Evelyn and Adrian maintained their vigil over Lucas. The baby was visibly stronger now, more active, reaching for toys and making sounds that suggested personality emerging alongside health. "He's going to be okay," Evelyn said, more to herself than Adrian. "He is, because we got him help in time." Adrian paused, then, "I've been thinking about what you said, about wanting him to have a normal childhood." "And?" "We can't give him normal, but we can give him happy, secure, loved." He looked at Lucas with that fierce protectiveness. "We can make sure he knows he's the most important thing in both our lives, even when the rest of the world is chaos." "How do we do that when we can barely stand each other?" "We learn." Adrian's voice was firm. "We put him first, ahead of our anger and hurt. We figure out how to cooperate even when we disagree. We become the parents he deserves, even if we're not the couple we should have been." The words landed with unexpected weight. Evelyn realized Adrian was proposing something she hadn't quite articulated: a functional co-parenting relationship built on Lucas's needs rather than their compatibility. Can we do that? Put aside everything that went wrong between us? We have to, because the alternative, fighting over him, using him as leverage, poisoning his childhood with our conflicts, that's not acceptable. Adrian's eyes met hers. "I may be a lot of things you don't like, Evelyn, but I'm not going to be a father who puts his own grievances ahead of his son's well-being." "Neither am I." "Then we have common ground. We build from there." Lucas yawned, his small face scrunching adorably, and both his parents smiled despite everything. In that moment, Evelyn glimpsed what their future might look like. Not romance or reconciliation, but partnership. Two people who'd failed at marriage but might succeed at raising a child together. Patricia came in for night vitals, pronounced everything excellent, and reminded them both to get some sleep. Adrian had finally agreed to use the second bed, though Evelyn suspected he'd wake at any small sound from Lucas. As Evelyn lay in darkness, listening to her son's peaceful breathing and Adrian's restless shifting across the room, she thought about the phone call from Agent Walsh, about tabloid speculation and security protocols and the life Lucas would inherit. And she realized something that should have been obvious from the beginning. There was no protecting Lucas from Adrian's world. That world was Lucas's world now, too. The only choice was whether to navigate it together or separately. Tomorrow they'd leave the hospital. Tomorrow the carefully controlled environment would give way to reality. The Beacon Hill apartment, the security detail, the media scrutiny, all of it. But tonight, in this quiet room, they were just three people learning how to be a family. Imperfect, complicated, bound together by circumstance and biology, and a 7-month-old baby who'd changed everything. Evelyn closed her eyes, exhaustion finally winning, and let herself believe that maybe, just maybe, they could make this work. Sunday morning arrived with deceptive calm. Lucas woke at 6 a.m., happy and hungry, showing no signs of the crisis that had brought them here 4 days ago. Dr. Chen performed her final examination with visible satisfaction, declaring him ready for discharge. Continue the oral antibiotics for 10 more days. Follow-up appointment Wednesday. She smiled at Lucas, who was grabbing at her stethoscope with determined fingers. He's a fighter. You're lucky parents. After she left, Adrian coordinated the discharge logistics with military precision. Marcus had already moved Evelyn's belongings from her Jamaica Plain apartment to Beacon Hill. A car service waited downstairs. The new apartment was fully stocked and staffed, ready for their arrival. Evelyn dressed Lucas in the outfit she'd brought to the hospital what felt like a lifetime ago. Impossibly small clothes for a baby who'd already changed both their lives irrevocably. Her hands shook slightly as she fastened the snaps, reality finally catching up with her. "Hey," Adrian's voice was quiet. He'd noticed her trembling. "He's okay. We're taking him home healthy. To a home I've never seen, with security guards and staff I don't know. To a life I didn't choose." The words came out before she could stop them. "To safety. To resources. To everything he needs." Adrian kept his tone even. "I know this isn't what you wanted, but it's what we have." The ride to Beacon Hill was brief, the car gliding through Sunday morning streets with practiced efficiency. Sarah sat in front with the driver, while Evelyn and Adrian flanked Lucas's car seat in back. The baby watched winter light play across the windows, fascinated by the motion and shadows. The apartment building was exactly what Evelyn expected. Elegant brick facade, discreet entrance, the kind of address that whispered old money and careful exclusivity. Marcus met them in the lobby, already coordinating with building security about protocols and access points. The elevator rose smoothly to the 4th floor, opened directly into the apartment's private foyer. Adrian held the door while Evelyn carried Lucas inside, and she stopped, taking in the space that was supposedly now her home. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked Boston Common. Hardwood floors gleamed beneath expensive rugs. The furniture was elegant without being ostentatious, chosen for comfort as much as appearance. It was beautiful and terrifying in equal measure, a gilded cage decorated with impeccable taste. "Master Suite is this way," Adrian gestured down a hallway. "I had them set up the nursery and the connecting room, but there's space in your bedroom if you prefer to keep Lucas closer, initially." Evelyn followed, Lucas heavy in her arms, and found a bedroom that could have housed her entire Jamaica Plain apartment. King-size bed, sitting area, walk-in closet, already filled with her modest wardrobe, looking lost in the vast space. Through an archway, she glimpsed the nursery, professional setup with crib, changing table, rocking chair, everything top quality and perfectly arranged. "It's too much," she said quietly. "It's adequate." Adrian set down the bag he'd been carrying. "There's a study down the hall if you want private workspace. Kitchen is fully stocked. The cook's name is Maria. She'll prepare whatever you want. Night nurse is Eleanor. She comes on duty at 8 p.m. "Adrian, I don't know how to live like this." "You learn. Same way you learn to live on minimum budget in Jamaica Plain." He moved to the windows, looking out at the city. "This isn't charity, Evelyn. This is Lucas's life. You're welcome to it because you're his mother, but it exists because of what I've built." The distinction was clear. She was here by necessity, not right. A guest in the life Adrian was constructing for their son. Before she could respond, her phone rang. Unknown number again. She showed Adrian the screen. "Don't answer," he said immediately, but something made Evelyn pick up anyway. "Hello? Miss Carter, this is Agent Walsh. We really need to talk. I'm parked outside your new building. Perhaps we could have coffee, just a casual conversation?" Evelyn's blood ran cold. "How did you know where I am? We just arrived. We've been monitoring the situation. Please, just a few minutes of your time. I think you'll find our interests align more than you realize." Adrian was already moving, hand out for the phone. Evelyn gave it to him. "Agent Walsh, this is Adrian Moreau. You're harassing the mother of a 7-month-old infant who was just released from the hospital. I'm documenting this call and forwarding it to my attorneys along with a complaint to your supervisors." His voice was ice. "If you contact Ms. Carter again, if you approach her in public, if you so much as look in her direction, I will make it my personal mission to ensure you spend the rest of your career investigating parking violations in Alaska. Are we clear?" Silence on the other end, then. "Mr. Moreau, we're conducting a legitimate investigation." "Into what? My business dealings?" "Then investigate those. Leave my family out of it." He disconnected, then immediately called David Chen. "The FBI agent is outside our building. I want a restraining order filed within the hour." Evelyn sank into the nursery's rocking chair. Lucas clutched against her chest. The fear she'd been holding at bay crashed over her. Federal agents stalking her. Her location somehow tracked. The full weight of Adrian's complicated life pressing down. "How did they know we'd be here?" she asked when Adrian finished his call. "They've been watching, following the discharge logistics, tracking the car service." He looked grim. "This is more aggressive than typical FBI fishing expedition. Someone's pushing them hard." "Who would do that?" "Competitors who want to see me distracted. Enemies who think family makes me vulnerable." Adrian moved to the window, scanning the street below. "Or someone inside the bureau with a personal grudge. Doesn't matter. We handle it the same way." "By hiding? By turning this apartment into a fortress? By being strategic about exposure until the attention dies down?" He turned back to her. "This is temporary, Evelyn. The media circus, the federal interest, it'll fade when they realize there's no story to tell. We just need to outlast the initial frenzy." Lucas squirmed in Evelyn's arms, making sounds that suggested he was ready to eat. The mundane need grounded her, pulled her back from spiral of fear. "I need to feed him. Kitchen is stocked with formula. Maria can prepare bottles, or you can—" "I'll do it." Evelyn stood, needing something normal to hold on to. "Can you show me where everything is?" The kitchen was professional grade, all gleaming stainless steel and expensive appliances. Maria appeared, a woman in her 50s with kind eyes and efficient movements. She had bottles already prepared, warmed to perfect temperature. "Mr. Moreau explained Lucas's feeding schedule," Maria said. "I'll keep everything ready so you don't have to worry about preparation." Evelyn wanted to say she preferred doing it herself, but exhaustion won. "Thank you." She settled in the living room to feed Lucas, the massive windows offering panoramic city views. Adrian made more calls, coordinating security responses and legal actions. The apartment filled with quiet efficiency, staff moving through their duties, Marcus conferring with Adrian about threat assessments, Sarah stationed near the entrance. This was her life now. This choreographed dance of protection and protocol. Lucas finished eating and dozed against her shoulder. Evelyn stood, intending to put him down for a nap, but found herself wandering the apartment instead. Study lined with books, guest rooms decorated with impersonal elegance, bathroom with fixtures that probably cost more than her monthly rent used to. In the nursery, she laid Lucas in his new crib, vastly superior to the second-hand one from Jamaica Plain. He settled immediately, comfortable despite the unfamiliar surroundings. Babies adapted so easily. It was adults who struggled with change. She found Adrian in the study, reviewing documents on a laptop. He looked up when she entered. "He's sleeping?" "Yes." Maria was right about the bottles. He ate well. Evelyn moved to the window, unable to stop herself from scanning the street for federal agents. "How long do we have to live like this?" "Like what?" "Like prisoners, hiding from investigators, surrounded by security, afraid to answer our phones." "We're not prisoners. We're protected." Adrian closed his laptop. "Give it 2 weeks. The initial media interest will die down when they realize we're not providing drama. The FBI will move on when they accept you're not cooperating. Life will normalize. This will never be normal. No, he admitted. But it will be stable. Routine. Lucas will have structure and security. You'll have resources and support. We'll find a rhythm. Evelyn studied him, this man who'd rebuilt her life in 4 days, who'd mobilized armies of lawyers and doctors and staff with single phone calls. Why are you doing all this? He's my son. It's more than that. You could provide support without this level of involvement. You could have fought for custody, kept me at distance. She gestured around the apartment. This, giving me space in your world, including me in decisions. Why? Adrian was quiet for a long moment. Because despite everything, despite the lies and the hiding, you're a good mother. Lucas needs you. He paused. And because I failed at being a husband. I'm not going to fail at being a father or a co-parent. The honesty caught Evelyn off guard. What happened to us? In the marriage, I mean. When did it start going wrong? Probably from the beginning. We got married too fast for the wrong reasons. Adrian's voice was matter-of-fact. You wanted stability and someone who'd protect you. I don't know what I wanted. Maybe proof I could have something normal, something beyond business and power. And neither of us got what we wanted. No, but we got Lucas. Adrian met her eyes, which makes all the failure worth it. Before Evelyn could respond, Marcus appeared in the doorway. Sir, we have a situation. The tabloid published their story. It's worse than expected. Adrian's expression hardened. Show me. Marcus pulled up a website on his phone. Evelyn glimpsed the headline before Adrian could block her view. Moreau's secret love child. Did mystery woman trap billionaire? With baby? The article was everything she'd feared. Speculation about their relationship, suggestions she'd deliberately gotten pregnant to secure financial support, anonymous sources claiming she'd been threatening to expose Adrian's paternity unless he paid her off. Her old apartment building was photographed, neighbors supposedly quoted saying she'd been struggling financially. None of that is true, Evelyn whispered. Doesn't matter. It's published. Adrian scrolled through the article, his jaw tight. They have photos of you from yesterday leaving the hospital. Someone's been following you for days. The violation made Evelyn's skin crawl. Strangers photographing her, inventing narratives about her life, publishing lies to thousands of readers. We sue, Marcus said. Defamation, invasion of privacy. Make an example of them. No. Adrian set the phone down. We release a statement correcting the major falsehoods, then we ignore it. Lawsuits just generate more coverage, prove we're bothered. We act like this is beneath our notice. But people will believe it, Evelyn protested. They'll think I'm some kind of con artist who trapped you. People who matter know the truth. Everyone else is irrelevant. Adrian's tone was firm. This is the cost of visibility. We pay it and move on. The rest of Sunday passed in surreal domesticity. Lucas woke from his nap, hungry and happy. Maria prepared lunch, gourmet sandwiches that felt absurd given the circumstances. Eleanor arrived at 8 p.m., a competent woman in her 60s who'd specialized in infant care for 20 years. I'll take the night shift, Eleanor explained. You both need real sleep after the hospital stay. I'll bring Lucas to you for feedings, but otherwise handle overnight care. Evelyn wanted to argue that she was Lucas's mother, she should handle nights, but exhaustion was winning. The thought of uninterrupted sleep felt impossibly luxurious. That night, lying in the massive bed in her new room, Evelyn heard Lucas cry briefly around midnight. She started to rise but heard Eleanor's soothing voice, the sound of a bottle being prepared. Within minutes, silence returned. Someone else was caring for her son. Someone competent and kind, but still, not her. Evelyn stared at the ceiling, feeling control slip further from her grasp. Monday morning brought new complications. David Chen called with news that Agent Walsh had been officially reprimanded for her aggressive approach, but that didn't mean the investigation was over. Just that different agents would be handling it with more subtlety. They'll still be watching, David warned, documenting your movements, looking for patterns they can exploit. Be careful about who you talk to and where you go. Adrian took the call in the study while Evelyn fed Lucas breakfast, pureed sweet potato that ended up mostly on his face rather than in his mouth. Maria hovered nearby, ready to help, but Evelyn had insisted on doing this herself. Small victory in a war she was steadily losing. "We need to talk." Adrian appeared in the kitchen doorway, his expression serious. "About?" "Long-term arrangements, legal protections for Lucas, custody agreements, financial planning." He gestured toward the study. "David's on video call. We should discuss this together." Evelyn's stomach tightened. This was it. The conversation where Adrian formalized his control, where her role as mother got codified into legal restrictions and schedules. She cleaned Lucas up, settled him in his bouncer with toys, and followed Adrian to the study. David's face filled the laptop screen, professional and sympathetic. "Ms. Carter, good to see you. I understand this is difficult timing, but we need to establish legal framework before situations force our hand." David pulled up documents on his end. "I'm recommending joint legal custody with Adrian as primary residential parent, given security concerns and resource availability." "Primary residential parent? Lucas lives with me." "Lucas lives in an apartment owned by Adrian, protected by Adrian's security, supported by Adrian's financial resources," David said gently. "Legally, we need to acknowledge that reality. But joint legal custody means you have equal say in major decisions: education, medical care, religious upbringing." "I don't want religious upbringing mentioned. We're not religious." Evelyn glanced at Adrian. "Agreed. Remove that clause." Adrian made a note. David continued through the document: visitation schedules if they separated, financial support obligations, education planning. Each clause felt like chains wrapping tighter, formalizing the loss of her independent life. "What if I don't agree to this?" Evelyn asked. "Then we negotiate terms you can accept," David said. "But some version of this is necessary. Courts will want clear custody arrangements, especially given the FBI investigation and media attention." "The courts? Why would courts be involved?" Adrian exchanged glances with David. "Because I'm filing for legal custody recognition. It protects Lucas if anything happens to you, ensures I have parental rights that can't be challenged." "You think I'd challenge your parental rights? I think you hid my son from me for 7 months. I'm not gambling on your cooperation anymore." Adrian's voice was hard. "This makes everything legal and binding. No more ambiguity." The betrayal stung, even though logically Evelyn understood his position. She'd proven herself untrustworthy by hiding Lucas. Why would Adrian rely on her word now? "Fine." The word came out bitter. "What do I need to sign?" "We're not signing anything today," David interjected. "You should have your own attorney review these documents. Make sure your interests are protected. I can recommend several excellent family law specialists." "More attorneys, more legal fees I can't afford." "I'll cover your legal representation," Adrian said. "This needs to be fair, not just favorable to me." "How generous." Evelyn couldn't keep the sarcasm out. "It's practical. A custody agreement where you feel cheated will just generate conflict. I want this settled cleanly." Adrian's tone was matter-of-fact. "Take time, review with counsel, propose changes. We'll negotiate like adults." After the call ended, Evelyn sat in silence, processing how completely her life had been reorganized. Joint custody, legal frameworks, attorneys negotiating her relationship with her own child. "I know you're angry," Adrian said. "Do you? Do you have any idea what this feels like? Watching you systematically take over every aspect of my life?" "I'm not taking over. I'm taking responsibility. There's a difference." He closed the laptop. "You created a situation where Lucas was at risk. I'm fixing that. If that feels like control, maybe that's because you need controlling." The words detonated between them. Evelyn stood abruptly, too furious to sit. "I need controlling? I kept our son alive for 7 months on my own. I made sacrifices you can't imagine to give him a good life." "A good life? You couldn't afford proper medical care. You were one emergency away from disaster, which happened, by the way. Your sacrifices nearly killed him." Adrian stood too, matching her anger. "Stop romanticizing your struggle. It was dangerous and unnecessary. It was freedom. It was building something that was mine, not just an extension of your empire. It was pride. and Lucas paid the price for it. Adrian moved closer, his voice dropping to something colder than shouting. You can hate me for taking control. You can resent every security guard, an attorney, and legal document. But Lucas is safe now, which is more than I can say about your version of motherhood. The accusation landed like a physical blow. Evelyn felt tears burning but refused to let them fall. You're a bastard. I'm a father protecting his son. If that makes me a bastard, I'll live with it. They stood in tense silence, Lucas's happy babbling drifting in from the kitchen, oblivious to his parents' conflict. Finally, Evelyn spoke quietly. I can't stay here. Not like this. Not with you controlling everything and throwing my mistakes in my face. Where exactly would you go? Back to Jamaica Plain? That apartment's already been rented to someone else. Your belongings are here. Adrian's voice was relentless. You have $1,100 in savings and no immediate income. So where exactly would you take my son? The trap was perfect. He'd removed all her options, left her completely dependent. I hate you, she whispered. Right now, I'm okay with that. As long as Lucas is safe, I don't need you to like me. Adrian moved toward the door. But we still have to make this work. Figure out how to co-parent even when we'd rather be anywhere else. For him. He left, and Evelyn sank back into the chair, shaking with rage and helplessness. This was her life now. Trapped in luxury, bound by legal agreements, her every choice subject to Adrian's veto. She'd called him to save Lucas's life. She'd known there would be consequences, but she hadn't imagined this. Losing herself completely in the process. Hours passed in tense quiet. Evelyn focused on Lucas, playing with him, feeding him, changing him. The ordinary tasks of motherhood that felt like the only territory still completely hers. Adrian stayed in another room, making calls and working remotely. They moved through the apartment like hostile roommates, communicating only when necessary. Evening brought unexpected visitors. Marcus appeared with 2 women, both professional, polished, carrying designer bags. Ms. Carter, this is Rebecca Lynn and Sophia Martinez from Chen Associates. They specialize in family law. Marcus made introductions smoothly. Mr. Moreau arranged for them to review the custody documents and represent your interests. The women smiled warmly, seemingly oblivious to, or perhaps accustomed to, walking into tense family situations. We'd like to go over everything with you, Rebecca said. Make sure you understand your rights and options. This doesn't have to be adversarial. Evelyn wanted to refuse on principle, to reject anything Adrian had arranged. But these women were offering her exactly what she needed, legal expertise independent from Adrian's control. Thank you, she said finally. When can we start? They spent 3 hours in the study going through documents clause by clause. Rebecca and Sophia were thorough, pointing out areas that favored Adrian too heavily, suggesting amendments that would protect Evelyn's parental rights. The primary residential parent designation is concerning, Sophia noted. It gives Adrian final say on living arrangements. We should propose joint residential custody with primary physical location determined by mutual agreement. He'll never accept that, Evelyn said. He might, if we frame it right. The goal is ensuring you both have equal legal standing. Rebecca made notes. We can't change that his resources exceed yours, but we can ensure that doesn't translate to unequal parental status. By the time they finished, Evelyn had a framework she could actually accept. Joint custody with shared decision-making, neither parent having default authority over the other. Financial support structured as Lucas's right, not Adrian's charity. Clear protocols for dispute resolution. This is workable, she told them. Thank you. After they left, she found Adrian in the living room watching Lucas play on a mat with age-appropriate toys. Your attorneys are good, Evelyn said. They're the best. Adrian didn't look away from Lucas. Did they help? Yes, we have proposed amendments to your custody draft. Send them over. I'll review tonight. He paused. I meant what I said about wanting this fair. I don't want to fight you, Evelyn. I just want Lucas protected. By controlling everything. By ensuring stability. There's a difference. Adrian finally looked at her. But I heard you this afternoon about feeling trapped, so I'm willing to negotiate terms that give you more autonomy as long as Lucas's safety isn't compromised. The olive branch was small but significant. Evelyn sat down, maintaining distance but acknowledging the gesture. I need to be able to make decisions about his daily life. What he eats, his schedule, how I parent him. She kept her voice even. You can have all the security protocols and legal protections, but I need to actually be his mother, not just supervised caretaker. Agreed. As long as your decisions don't put him at risk. Who decides what's risky? We do. Together. Adrian's voice was firm, which means we have to communicate, even when we're angry, even when we'd rather not. I don't know if I can do that. Trust your judgment after you've spent days telling me mine is inadequate. And I don't know if I can trust yours after you hid my son for 7 months. Adrian met her eyes, but we both have to try, because the alternative is years of conflict and Lucas caught in the middle. They sat in silence, watching their son reach for toys with determination that reminded Evelyn painfully of both of them, her stubbornness, Adrian's refusal to quit. I'm sorry, she said finally, for not telling you about the pregnancy, for making that choice alone. You were right. It wasn't just my decision to make. Adrian's expression shifted, some of the hardness easing. And I'm sorry for making you feel trapped here. That wasn't my intention, even if it was the result. The apologies hung between them. Insufficient, but genuine. First steps towards something that might eventually resemble cooperation. Lucas chose that moment to topple over, losing his balance during an ambitious reach. He looked surprised rather than upset, and both Evelyn and Adrian moved to help him. Their hands met on Lucas's small body, and they froze, caught in unexpected proximity. We can make this work, Adrian said quietly. Not perfectly, but well enough for him. How do you know? Because we both want the same thing. Everything else is negotiable. Over the following weeks, they found their rhythm. Evelyn reviewed and negotiated custody terms with Rebecca and Sophia until she had an agreement she could sign without resentment. Adrian coordinated security, but consulted Evelyn on implementation, making sure she understood protocols rather than just following orders. The FBI investigation continued in background, but Agent Walsh's reprimand had made other agents more cautious. They watched from distance rather than aggressive approach. David Chen fielded their inquiries with practiced deflection. Media interest did indeed fade, as Adrian predicted. When Evelyn and Adrian provided no drama, generated no headlines, the tabloids moved on to fresher scandals. Life settled into routines that felt almost normal. Marcus remained a constant presence. Sarah rotated with other security staff. Maria prepared meals with increasing understanding of Evelyn's preferences. Eleanor handled nights with competent kindness. The apartment became less foreign, more like home, though Evelyn sometimes still woke disoriented, forgetting where she was. Lucas thrived. His follow-up appointments showed complete recovery from the infection. He grew stronger, more interactive, developing personality that delighted and terrified both parents in equal measure. Adrian split time between Boston and New York, present more than absent, learning fatherhood through immersion. He was awkward with diapers but patient with feeding. He read parenting books with the same intensity he applied to business contracts. He made mistakes but learned from them. And slowly, cautiously, Evelyn and Adrian learned to be allies rather than adversaries. 3 months after Lucas's hospitalization, Evelyn woke to spring sunlight flooding the apartment. She found Adrian in the kitchen with Lucas, attempting to feed him breakfast while managing a conference call on mute. Yes, I understand the timeline concerns, but my schedule is non-negotiable on Tuesdays. That's Lucas's pediatrician day. Adrian unmuted. Reschedule the meeting. Thanks. He muted again, offered Lucas another spoonful of oatmeal. Evelyn smiled despite herself. You're getting better at the multitasking. Years of business training finally useful for something. Adrian wiped oatmeal off Lucas's chin. Coffee's fresh, and Maria left pastries. She poured coffee, settled at the counter, and watched father and son navigate breakfast. Lucas was 10 months old now, pulling himself up on furniture, babbling consonants that almost sounded like words. He'd never know the Jamaica Plain apartment, would grow up thinking this life of security and privilege was normal. Sometimes that bothered Evelyn. Most days, she accepted it. I've been thinking, Adrian said, ending his call and giving Lucas his full attention. About expanding the custody agreement. Evelyn's stomach tightened. What kind of expansion? The kind where I'm more involved in Boston full-time, where we stop splitting my time between cities and I relocate primary operations here. He kept his tone casual, but Evelyn heard the significance. I'm missing too much of his life commuting. That's a huge business decision. He's more important than business. Adrian said it simply, like stating obvious fact. I've spent 3 months proving I can run my companies remotely. Time to make it permanent. What about your New York life? Evelyn stopped, realizing she'd been about to ask about his social life. Dating. Things she had no right to question. What about it? Adrian met her eyes, seeming to understand exactly what she wasn't asking. I have a son in Boston. That's where I need to be. The implication sat heavy between them. Adrian was reorganizing his entire life around Lucas, making sacrifices she hadn't asked for and couldn't repay. Thank you, she said quietly, for prioritizing him. It's not sacrifice, it's choice. Adrian lifted Lucas from the high chair, the baby immediately grabbing his father's hair with sticky hands. Best choice I've made. That afternoon, Evelyn received an email from an old colleague, a corporate client looking for freelance writer for ongoing contract. Good money, flexible hours, work she could do from home while caring for Lucas. She showed Adrian, expecting resistance or suggestions she didn't need to work. Instead, he read it carefully and nodded. This looks legitimate. Good opportunity. Want me to have my attorneys review the contract terms before you sign? You're okay with me working? Why wouldn't I be? You're not just Lucas's mother, you're allowed to have professional identity. He handed back her phone. Besides, might be good for you, having something that's entirely yours. The understanding surprised her. This version of Adrian, thoughtful, supportive, respecting her autonomy, felt different from the man she'd married and divorced. People change, he said, apparently reading her expression. Or maybe they become who they were supposed to be once they find the right motivation. Is that what Lucas is? Your motivation? He's my everything. Adrian said it without drama, just truth. Which means his mother matters too. Your happiness affects him, so yes, I care about you having fulfilling work and personal space. Evelyn accepted the contract after legal review. Within weeks, she'd established new professional rhythm, writing during Lucas's naps, collaborating with clients during his quiet playtimes. The work felt good, reminded her she was capable and skilled, gave her identity beyond motherhood. Adrian noticed and approved, sometimes taking Lucas for longer stretches so she could focus on deadlines. They were becoming partners, not romantic, not the relationship they'd failed at before, but functional co-parents who genuinely liked each other more days than not. By summer, life had settled into patterns that felt sustainable. Lucas took his first steps in July. Adrian and Evelyn both present, both cheering, capturing the moment on video to send to extended family. The FBI investigation quietly closed without charges, the agents apparently concluding there was nothing actionable to find. Agent Walsh had transferred to different division. The threat faded into background noise. Media occasionally mentioned Adrian's son, but usually just in passing, society pages noting his attendance at charity functions, business publications mentioning work-life balance. Lucas had become fact rather than scandal. Security remained but felt less intrusive. Sarah had become almost like family, Marcus a reassuring presence rather than intimidating one. The staff knew Lucas's routines, anticipated needs, made life easier rather than surveilled. One evening in late August, Evelyn found Adrian on the balcony, watching summer sunset paint Boston's skyline in gold and orange. Lucas slept peacefully inside, his breathing visible on the baby monitor Adrian kept clipped to his belt. "Penny for your thoughts," Evelyn said, joining him. "Thinking about the hospital, the day I got your call." Adrian's voice was reflective. How terrified I was. How angry. How everything changed in one conversation. Regret it? Not even a little. He looked at her, something soft in his expression. I regret how we got here, the lies, the mistakes we both made. But I don't regret where we ended up. Even though I trapped you, made you responsible for a child you didn't want, you didn't trap me. You gave me something I didn't know I needed. Adrian turned back to the sunset. I spent so many years convinced family was weakness. Turns out it's the opposite. They stood in comfortable silence, the city humming below them, their son sleeping safe inside. I'm pregnant, Evelyn said quietly. Adrian's head whipped toward her, shock clear on his face. What? 8 weeks. I found out yesterday. She kept her voice steady. I know this complicates things. I know we haven't been. How? Adrian's brain was clearly struggling to process. Remember that night 3 months ago when Lucas had that terrible nightmare and we were both exhausted and you stayed over in my room because he kept crying and we just. Right, that night. Adrian's expression was unreadable. You're sure? 3 pregnancy tests and a doctor's confirmation, sure. He was quiet for a long moment, processing. Then, okay? Okay? That's all you have to say? I'm processing. Adrian moved to the balcony railing, gripping it tightly. Another baby, another child I didn't plan for. Evelyn's heart sank. If you don't want, I'm not asking you to. Stop. He turned to face her. I'm not running. I'm not that person anymore. I'm just surprised. So am I. We were careful. Well, we thought we were. Apparently not careful enough. Something that might have been humor crossed his face. Seems to be our pattern. I can do this alone if you need me to. I understand if you don't want another. Evelyn. Adrian crossed to her, taking her shoulders gently. I want this baby. I want to be there from the beginning this time. All of it. Doctor's appointments, midnight cravings, delivery room, everything I missed with Lucas. Really? Really? He pulled her into unexpected embrace. We'll figure it out. Same way we figured out Lucas. Evelyn let herself lean into him, feeling tension she hadn't realized she was carrying release slightly. We're not together. This is going to be complicated. Everything about us is complicated. This is just one more complication we'll manage. Adrian's voice was steady against her hair. But maybe it's time to stop thinking of ourselves as divorced co-parents and start thinking of ourselves as whatever this is. Family, I guess. Unconventional family, but family nonetheless. Are you suggesting we get back together? I'm suggesting we stop pretending we're not already together in all the ways that matter. He pulled back enough to see her face. We live together, raise a child together, make life decisions together. Adding romance to that equation doesn't seem like a huge leap. We tried marriage once. It failed. We tried marriage when we were different people with different priorities. We're not those people anymore. Adrian's eyes held hers. I'm not asking you to marry me again. I'm asking if you're willing to see where this goes when we're both actually invested in making it work. Evelyn thought about the past months, the slow building of trust, the partnership they'd developed, the moments when Adrian's presence felt necessary rather than intrusive. She thought about carrying his child, about Lucas having a sibling, about the family they were accidentally creating. I'm willing to try, she said finally. Good, because I'm all in. Adrian smiled, the expression genuine and warm. Let's do this right this time. 18 months later, Evelyn woke to chaos. Lucas was 2.5, his sister Emma was 4 months old, and the apartment was alive with the beautiful disaster of family life. Adrian appeared in the bedroom doorway, Lucas riding on his shoulders, Emma tucked in his other arm. Lucas wants pancakes. Emma wants to eat Lucas's hair. I need coffee. He grinned at Evelyn. Welcome to Sunday morning. She laughed, accepting Emma, while Adrian dealt with Lucas's breakfast demands. They moved through morning routines with practiced coordination, feeding babies, managing toddler negotiations, stealing kisses when the children weren't demanding attention. The apartment had evolved. Lucas's nursery had become his bedroom, Emma inhabited the former guest room, and somehow they'd all learned to coexist in space that felt simultaneously too large and too small. Adrian had relocated his business operations permanently to Boston. Evelyn's freelance career had expanded into a small consulting firm she ran from home. They'd married quietly 6 months ago, small ceremony with just family and closest friends, nothing like their first elaborate wedding. This time it worked because they'd built it on truth rather than illusion. They knew each other's flaws, had fought through worse conflicts, had chosen each other with open eyes rather than romantic fantasy. Security remained, though integrated more naturally now. Sarah had become Emma's godmother. Marcus played Uncle Roll with surprising gentleness. The staff had become extended family. The FBI investigation was distant memory. The media had lost interest completely. Life had normalized into something chaotic and wonderful. "I got the lab results back," Adrian said over breakfast while managing Lucas's attempt to wear his pancake as a hat. "Emma's genetic screening is all clear. No concerns." "Good." Evelyn nursed Emma while simultaneously preventing Lucas from painting with syrup. "Dr. Chen said she's developing perfectly." "Which one? David or Sarah?" "Sarah. Pediatrician, not lawyer." Evelyn smiled at the confusion their life had generated. Too many people named Chen in various professional capacities. Lucas chose that moment to announce loudly, "Baby sister messy." His grasp of family dynamics was still developing. "She's your sister, buddy. You help keep her safe." Adrian wiped pancake from Lucas's face. "I protect her," Lucas declared with 2-year-old certainty. "That's right. We all protect each other." Adrian caught Evelyn's eye across the table, and she saw everything in that look. The journey they'd traveled, the family they'd built, the life they'd created from crisis and mistakes. That afternoon, while both children napped, Evelyn found Adrian in the study reviewing documents. "What are you working on?" "Education trust for the kids, making sure they're protected financially, regardless of what happens to the businesses." He gestured to the papers. "Also updating our custody agreements to reflect Emma's existence." "We're married now. Do we need custody agreements?" "Hope for the best, plan for the worst." Adrian set down his pen. "I learned that lesson from almost losing Lucas. I won't make the same mistake twice." Evelyn moved behind him, resting her hands on his shoulders. "We're not going to lose each other, not this time." "No, but I still planned carefully." He covered her hands with his. "It's what I do." "I know. It's why we work now. You plan, I adapt, we meet in the middle." "Is that the secret to our success?" "That and the fact that we actually like each other this time around." Evelyn kissed the top of his head. "Amazing what honesty and shared purpose can accomplish." The monitor crackled with Emma's waking sounds. Lucas would follow shortly. Their brief moment of adult conversation was ending. "Welcome to parenthood," Adrian said wryly. "Wouldn't trade it for anything." "Neither would I." They moved to handle their waking children, stepping into the beautiful chaos together. The life Evelyn had built in Jamaica Plain was gone completely. That scared, isolated woman who'd thought hiding was protection. In her place was someone stronger, someone who'd learned that accepting help wasn't weakness, and that family came in unexpected forms. Adrian had changed too. The man who'd declared family was liability now organized his entire life around 2 small children who thought he existed primarily to provide entertainment and snacks. They'd both been transformed by the crisis that brought them back together, by the desperate hospital call, the fear of losing Lucas, the slow rebuilding of trust through shared purpose. Some nights, after both children were finally asleep and the apartment settled into quiet, Evelyn would stand on the balcony and remember that February morning when Lucas's fever had shattered her carefully controlled world. She'd been so afraid of Adrian's power, his control, the ways he'd reorganize her life. All of that had happened exactly as she'd feared, but she'd also gained a partner, a family, a life rich with love and chaos, and the kind of security that came from knowing someone would fight the entire world to protect the people they loved. It wasn't the life she'd planned. It wasn't the story she'd imagined writing. But watching Adrian read bedtime stories to Lucas while Emma dozed in her arms, Evelyn knew it was better than anything she could have created alone. They'd built this family from secrets and lies, from crisis and desperation, from 2 people who'd failed at love once and decided to try again with harder-won wisdom. And somehow, improbably, it worked. Lucas had been the catalyst, the child who'd forced them back together. Emma was the proof they'd learned their lessons. And whatever came next, more children, new challenges, the endless negotiations of life together, they'd face it as they'd learned to face everything, together.